friends, welcome to Bookish Bliss, our virtual book club. Every week we will dig into a section of chapters in our favorite books. Let's get started!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of Bookish Bliss. We have a lot to discuss today.
Yes, we do. This week we are covering chapters 1 through 13 of A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. There will be no spoilers beyond the covered chapters. You don't have to read the whole book to listen. You just have to be caught up on the chapters we're covering. Amanda, what are you drinking tonight?
Megan, I have my boy back. Mark
West!
Yup, I got a bottle for my birthday and just cracked it open.
I love it.
What are you drinking tonight?
I'm unprepared again. The last episode, I was going on vacation. This one, I'm just getting back, but I found this black box Merlot
Oh, cool.
in my fridge. It was not opened, so I did a little sniff, and it smells perfectly fine. So I'm going to be pouring myself a glass of that tonight because I am unprepared.
Perfect. I love
as
it.
always. Consistent queen of not pouring my glass before we start.
It wouldn't be right if you already had poured your glass.
Exactly. At this point, I'm just going to stay the same and pour it on camera.
Perfect. I love it.
Can you believe we're on book 2?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Literally so much to talk about in this first episode. The whole first part 1.
I literally was like, we can totally do part 1 in one episode. And you know what? I'm kind of glad we did, even though it's a lot, because we just get out all the parts I don't like and then we get to the stuff I do like.
AKA the Tamlin parts.
So cheers to part 1 and getting it on the way.
Episode 7, baby.
Episode 7.
Delicious.
It's not bad.
Not bad at all.
Wine from a box. I don't drink wine from a box.
Perfect. Now let's get started with the good stuff and break down ACOMAF Part 1. Over to you, Meg. Please summarize this set of chapters for us.
Okay, just like with ACOTAR, I'm going to be doing the same thing for ACOMAF. I'm just going to be doing a brief few sentences about each of the chapters that we read, and then later on the episode, we'll be breaking it down a little bit further and more in detail. Chapter 1. Feyre wakes up from a nightmare. She has been throwing her guts up almost every single night since she's gotten back from under the mountain. Tamlin never wakes up with her. He sucks.
Yes, he does.
Chapter 2. Tamlin won't allow Feyre to do anything but plan their wedding with his childhood friend and Spring Court High Priestess Ianthe. Tamlin and Feyre have a roll in the hay, and he tells her there is no such thing as high ladies. Chapter 3. Tamlin allows Lucien to take Feyre to a nearby village to offer help to rebuild after Amarantha. No one wants their help, though. Lucien lectures Feyre, eye roll. This poor girl cannot catch a fucking break. Chapter 4. Wedding festivities have started because they're apparently engaged after 3 months under the mountain.
Yeah.
3 months after Under the Mountain, they're engaged. Wild. They are having dinner parties, hunts, picnics, and Feyre wants everything to be over. On her wedding day, she becomes a runaway bride, and Rhysand saves her from humiliating Tamlin in front of everyone by calling in her bargain.
That part was crazy.
Hello, Feyre darling. Chapter 5. Rhysand and Tamlin have a pissing contest. Rhysand obviously wins and whisks Feyre off to the night court. We get some banter between Feyre and Rhys, and she throws 2 shoes at his head. We get a glimpse of his palace above his court, and Rhysand tells Feyre he is going to teach her how to read. Chapter 6, we get to meet Rhysand's cousin Morgan. We get some more witty banter between Feyre and Rhysand. His goal while she is there is to teach her how to read and how to shield her mind from anyone like him, including himself. At the end of the lesson, he shows her a battle room, and he tells her war is coming.
Dun, dun, dun.
Chapter 7. Feyre starts to panic about her family. She doesn't want Rhysand to invade the mortal lands. He's like, WTF? What gave you the impression that I would be doing that? The king of Highburn is plotting and getting ready for an invasion, and Rhysand wants her to help. The rest of her time in the Night Court is uneventful. She returns to the Spring Court where Tamlin and Lucien grill her for info instead of wanting to spend quality time with her. Sad.
Poor Feyre.
Poor Feyre. Chapter 8. The Tithe has arrived. Tamlin is an arrogant son of a bee throughout the entire chapter, yelling at everyone all of the time. We meet a water wraith, and Feyre discovers some new powers and tells Tam Tam to get over himself.
Yes, I loved that part.
Chapter 9. We think Feyre and Tamlin are going to just say sorry and make up, but when she tries to tell Tamlin how she feels, he explodes the room, and if it wasn't for a shield she created out of fear, she could have been seriously hurt. For someone who wants to protect Feyre, he has a funny way of showing it.
Funny way. Not that funny, but...
We gotta laugh or we'd cry.
Yeah.
Chapter 10. Tamlin says he's going to be better for Feyre. He just cannot control his rage, but at the end of this chapter, our guy Rhysand is picking her up to bring her back for her week in the Night Court. A month has already gone by. Our girl is looking bad. She is depressed and her weight is lower than ever, and Rhysand is not happy.
Neither was Amanda.
Neither was Megan. Chapter 11. Rhysand tries to get her to banter with him, to do anything but be a ghost, but our girl has no energy. She reads and she eats. When she gets back to the Spring Court, she knows that Tamlin is not going to try anymore and the guards are going to be back in full force. Chapter 12. She was right. They are back in full force, and Tamlin has basically sent away everyone in the manor house. We see Feyre grow claws when she is frustrated, and Lucien sees it. Lucien tries to stick up for Feyre, but is shot down by both Tamlin and Ianthe. Tamlin locks Feyre in the manor with no way out. She has a panic attack. Rhysand smashes the shield, and Mor comes and saves her. Chapter 13. Feyre is back in the Night Court. She is choosing to stay there, and she decides to go with Rhysand to a part of his court that no one is allowed to know about. He tells her there is no going back after this. She agrees, and they are off to Velaris, the city of starlight. And that is the end of part 1.
Wow. First of all, way crazier start than ACOTAR.
Yes.
Like, way crazier. Action right away.
Mm-hmm.
Wildness right away. So far, we got 5 stars here.
Ooh, shoot.
All right, let's get into the characters now. First, we're going to catch up on our main characters, and then I'll introduce a few new ones that we have.
Ooh.
So, our main characters, Amarantha. She's dead and gone, but she's still haunting their dreams.
What a
both
bitch.
Tamlin and Feyre.
Yeah, well, she can haunt Tamlin's dreams. I don't care about that, but our girl Feyre needs a break.
I also wonder if Lucien, Rhysand, if they all have like kind of PTSD from that moment, but maybe we'll find out later.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been 3 months since Feyre was under the mountain, where she completed her 3 tasks, solved the riddle, freed Prithian, saved Tamlin, watched Tamlin murder Amarantha, died, and turned High Fae. Whew, a mouthful.
Whew, she did a lot more as a human than she's been allowed to do in these past 13 fucking chapters.
Right? She's been adjusting to her new immortal body ever since. She's been engaged to Tamlin for 2 months, but suffers from severe PTSD with constant nightmares and vomiting. She describes her mortal strength as more of a curse than a gift. She's dented and folded all of the silverware she's touched in the first 3 days she was back in the Spring Court. She's tripped over her stronger, faster legs so much that Alice removed all the irreplaceable items of value from her room. Alice was pissed when she broke an 800-year-old vase.
I would be pissed too.
Yeah, same. She's also shattered 5 glass doors just from closing them too hard. Feyre's also wearing dresses every day at Tamlin's request, even though she does not like it. The things we do for love. She debates asking Ianthe if she will pray for her, that she will one day like the dresses and the parties and her role as the bride. Although she does say that the day he proposed to her was the happiest day of her life.
I just don't even want to comment on this. Next.
She's been pondering what the people will call her when she marries Tamlin. High Lady, maybe? Tamlin clears this up for her and says she will be Lady of the Spring Court. But when she visited a nearby village with Lucien, someone called her Feyre Cursebreaker.
Yeah, because she's a badass, and that's a great name to have.
Yeah, it is. Feyre mentions she realized she couldn't remember the last time she truly laughed the night before her wedding. Cold feet, Feyre? I don't blame her.
Right? I'd have cold
Tamlin,
feet too.
yeah, Tamlin is not proving to be the best fiance.
No, he was not even a good boyfriend.
No.
Was he ever her boyfriend? I don't even know. I think
I
we
don't
just
even
skipped
know.
that step.
Yeah, it was a shock to me that they were engaged. I was like, what? Did they date?
No.
Well, Tamlin suffers from PTSD like Feyre. Feyre even caught him up all night staring at the window expecting danger, and he would be ready for it. He doesn't flinch though when Feyre is forced awake and physically sick over her nightmares.
I
He
just
doesn't let
can't.
Feyre go back to the Mortal Lands. He's in full protection mode. He knows that every other High Lord knows the love he has for Feyre and that she will be an easy target to get to Tamlin. He also agrees with Ianthe about Feyre wearing a horrible wedding dress, even though neither of them like it. And this bothers Feyre, that he doesn't take her side on this. We also learn that they have their own separate quarters, which is interesting. But he sleeps with her every night. And they still get it on at the beginning of part 1. And it's spicier than ever.
I cannot. I don't even know how to comment on this. There's
Yeah.
so much that I just want to say. For someone, like I said earlier, who wants to protect Feyre
Mm-hmm.
from these threats and from Rhysand, like, she's literally starving herself. She's vomiting every night. She's wasting away in front of your fucking eyes, and
Mm-hmm.
you have nothing to say about it.
Yeah.
Instead of go paint. Here's a new paint set.
Yeah.
Like,
That's not
what?
protection.
You
That's
should
abuse.
know that she can't do that because she's depressed and is
Yeah.
literally wants to die. And you can't see that?
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
know. I agree. I know. There's going to be a lot of this, listeners, of this whole episode.
I'm just getting started.
Yes. Well, let's talk about Lucian. Let's move on.
He's also on my shit list, so.
Yes, he is. He's still Tamlin's right-hand man, still lying to protect Feyre, although they are besties still. Lucian tells her at the end of the day, Tamlin is his High Lord and he has to follow his orders. Lucian explains to Feyre that Tamlin is terrified of seeing her in his enemy's hands, and they know it too. They know all they have to do to own him would be to get a hold of her. Lucian also admits to Feyre that Tamlin got what he didn't. They all heard her neck break, but Feyre got to come back, and he doubts that Tamlin will ever forget that sound either. He will do everything in his power to protect her from the danger again, even if it means keeping secrets, even if it means sticking to rules she doesn't like. In this, he will not bend, so do not ask him to, Lucian says. Not yet.
I get it. That's his High Lord. That is his guy. That is his friend at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But there's right and there's wrong, and you see Feyre wasting away,
Yeah,
and you barely open your mouth. You
I know.
barely do the bare minimum as someone's friend
Yeah,
to stick up for them.
yeah. And just put your head down when you're met with confrontation. Not
Yeah, and
right.
just looking at her with pity or whatever he's doing. Like,
Yeah,
just give him time. Like, no,
yeah. Just be
there's
patient.
there's always going to be something, just like she says at, I don't know, I think it's towards the end of these chapters. There's always going to be a threat. There's always going to be someone coming after us, and I cannot stay in this house for the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
And he is not budging at all.
And she's stronger now. And he acts like, I don't know, look at what she did under the mountain. You weren't protecting her then. Now she's got these powers and wants to master them and figure her shit out as a high fae, and you want to lock her in a room?
It's about
No.
control.
Yes, I agree. But let's move on to Rhysand.
Okay.
For the first 3 months, it's been crickets. What the hell happened to their deal?
He was
But
busy.
yes, he was busy. Here come the excuses for Rhysand. No, I'm just kidding. Just when Feyre freezes as she walks down the aisle, saying to herself that she can't do this. Help me,
Thank
help
God.
me, help me. Lightning cracks through the sky and darkness erupts. And Rhysand is straightening the lap on his black jacket. Hello, Feyre, darling. He comes to her rescue. Rhysand even knows that she hurls her guts up every night and that she can't go into certain rooms or see certain colors, unlike Tamlin. The first full day of having Feyre as a visitor, Rhysand teaches Feyre how to read and how to put her mental shields up. Oh, he's actually being so helpful.
Oh my god, someone who actually pays attention to Feyre's needs.
Yes.
Holy shit!
Wild. Rhysand fought in the war centuries ago.
Centuries ago.
Rhysand fought in the war centuries ago. He was young, but he convinced his father to let him take a legion of his soldiers to the continent. He was stationed in the south, right where the fighting was thickest, and the slaughter was horrible. He had no interest in ever seeing full-scale slaughter like that again. I cannot
Nope.
imagine.
Nope. So he's always been on the side of protecting humans, and everyone thinks he's this bad guy.
I know. Why?
Well, he's definitely morally gray. I
Yeah.
think that he
But aren't
has.
all Hive Lords?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that Tamlin's not this noble, perfect High Lord that he tries to portray himself as.
Yeah.
But Rhysand gets all the shit.
Yep.
Well, I think
I
it's
have a
because
feeling
he's
that's gonna change in this book.
yeah. Well, I think it's because he's the most powerful out of all of them. Like
Rhysand
they're all
is?
yeah, they're all scared of him.
Yeah, I know, and he's so secretive too, and I think that's what makes him a little bit more scary. Nobody knows anywhere in the Night Court. Nobody knows even if his court is underground or not. Even Tamlin asked Feyre that. So I feel like it's not only that he's the most powerful, but he's also the most secretive, and nobody really knows what he's up to. So they just obviously assume the worst.
Yeah, but I think it's always been that way, or
Yeah,
the Night Court has always had this like bad rap, probably from every High Lord that's ever been. And it seems like Rhysand is the most powerful High Lord of the Night Court that the Night Court has ever had. So
yeah.
it just makes it even worse, I think, when people think about their court.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's get into some new characters now. We've already mentioned
Mm.
her a few times, so I'll start with Ianthe. She is a high priestess, high fae noble, and childhood friend of Tamlin's. In fact, she was the youngest high priestess in 3 centuries, remained unmarried, childless, and keen to enjoy the finest males the land has to offer. She has her eye on Lucian, but he's not into it.
Nope.
She's helping Feyre plan the wedding and pretty much took over.
Yeah.
She worships Feyre and Tamlin as if they were new gods and chosen by the cauldron itself. Oh, cauldron. She even
Again.
picks out Feyre's clothes. But Feyre describes her as the hand of the goddess that leads her people from despair and darkness. She wore a pale blue-gray hood and an artfully twisted, layered robe. All the high priestess wore them. Her slim waist was on display with a sky blue belt, perfectly oval, limpid stones, and matching circlet, a delicate silver band with a large stone at the center. Under her hood was curly golden hair. She wore silver rings and bracelets like the children of the blessed. Feyre wondered if they stole the idea from the high priestesses or if a priestess put that in their heads.
Ooh,
That's
that's something to
interesting.
think about. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't even know if we ever get any answers on that.
She also has a tattoo of the phases of the moon. I believe it's on her face. She was lucky enough to escape from Prithian before Amarantha's wrath took over. Her father, one of Tamlin's greatest allies in the Spring Court, sensed the danger coming and fled with Ianthe, her mother, and 2 younger sisters to Valahan, although she doesn't talk about it. Feyre suspects this is why Lucian isn't interested in her. She fled, biding her time while her people were butchered and enslaved. That would be my reason.
I mean, it could be the reason, but I don't think that's the full thing.
Oh, okay. The other priestesses didn't care for Ianthe, and she didn't care for them either. She was happy right where she was with Tamlin, Feyre, and Lucian.
Maybe we should really give a think about why the other high priestesses don't like her.
We'll probably mention some reasons in this episode. Feyre and Ianthe grew very close. She wanted her to stay permanently after the wedding. She couldn't bear to see her months and months from now at Ninesar. We do briefly meet Bronn and Hart, 2
Ooh.
handsome high fae armed with weapons that marked them as Tamlin's guards. Bronn had brown hair and was tall. Hart had black hair and was built a bit more powerful than his friend. According to Ianthe, they were troublemakers. They were under the mountain and commented on Feyre's performance with the Mitten Guard, saying it was brilliant. One of them even asked Feyre if he could join her on a hunt, but she doesn't plan on hunting anytime soon.
She didn't like to hunt in the first place.
I
Now
know.
she definitely doesn't want to be hunting.
I know. These people don't get it. Like, she only hunted because she was fucking starving and had to
Y-
feed 3 other people, too.
Yeah, she said that. And then she had to hunt a fucking worm that was going to murder her. She definitely
Yeah.
doesn't want to be hunting anybody or anything anymore.
Crazy. We're going to briefly mention the handmaidens. We do not know what their pronunciation of their names are, but I'm going to give it a shot. Nuella and Ceridwen, maybe? The old handmaidens from under the mountain that were from the night court. Feyre had never seen them as anything but shadows. They were fully corporal. Okay.
Yeah.
Morrigan, or Mor for short, Rhysand's cousin, had bright golden hair tied back in a casual braid. She had sun-kissed skin, making her practically glow in the morning light. If Rhysand was the most beautiful man Feyre had ever seen, she was his female equivalent. Mor is Rhysand's only remaining relative. She wasn't under the mountain, though, and when Mor went to tell Feyre where she was at the time, Rhysand stopped her. Interesting. Where the fuck was she?
I know.
Oh, that's good. That means I'm going to know soon, so that's all I need to know.
Yes, you'll know probably in the next episode.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Azriel and Cassian, two more members of the Night Court that we sort of are introduced to in this section of chapters. Mor and Rhysand are talking about meeting up with Azriel and Cassian, but we don't know who they are yet. Feyre also mentions this to Tamlin and Lucien, and they make faces to each other, but Feyre can't tell if they know who they are or not. I bet you they do.
I bet you they do. And we will get to meet them next episode.
Interesting. Okay. Last up for the new characters is Illyrian warbands. They were arrogant bastards, a warrior race within Rhysand's lands. Some of them supported Amarantha, and Rhysand was busy hunting them the first 3 months after Under the Mountain, which is...
See?
That's why he waited so long to hold Feyre to her bargain. The world building section is up next. We got a new map. Well, same map, new territories called out on it.
Ooh.
We still have Hybern, Prythian, and the Fairy Realms on the map, but we do have a new territory north of the Fairy Realms, Valahan. This is where Ianthe and her family escaped to.
Mm-hmm.
In Prythian, we still see all the courts: spring, summer, autumn, winter, day, dawn, and night. Except there are new territories marked in the Night Court. I wonder why. The new Night Court territories are Mirian Mountains, Mirian Steppes, the Prison, Valeris, and the Court of Nightmares. Sounds like a place I do not want to go.
No.
Under the Mountain is still marked on our map, but with a new eastern place called out, Weaver's Cottage.
Ooh.
That sounds like it's going to be a person.
Yeah.
Wait, is that where they end up at the end of this section?
No, they end up in Valeris.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They're in Valeris. I'm actually surprised we don't see any territories marked in Hybern, because I know he's going to be the villain for this book, but he must be coming to Prythian. Okay.
I just
We'll stop there.
malfunction.
Yeah, you're like... Yeah, no, that was just a surprise to me. But, obviously I know this one's mostly going to be about Feyre being in the Night Court since we have all those new territories. But we'll see how the King of Hybern plays into our story. The dedication also, I called that out last time, looking at the dedication that we were going under the mountain. But this place is not called out on the map. A Court of Dreams, she says to Josh and Annie, my own Court of Dreams. Interesting. We'll leave that there for now. A little bit about our world now. The wards are repaired, but some of Amarantha's creatures snuck through the border before they were reactivated. So, Tamlin and Lucien are still hunting corrupt Fae. Feyre is of course wanting to go back to the Mortal Land. She wants to help with recovery efforts and hunt for food for the villagers and help rebuild what Amarantha destroyed. We have a few new ceremonies introduced to us in this chapter, one being the winter solstice. It's the holiest holiday in the winter and the day court, so there were 2 ceremonies. One at sunset that was an endless night of presents, dancing, and drinking in honor of the old sun's death. And one the following morning at dawn to welcome the sun's rebirth.
And it's Feyre's birthday.
Oh, it's Feyre's birthday?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not pick up on that.
Yeah.
I read too fast, I guess. I was too excited.
Yeah, and she doesn't tell anybody about it because she's, a
Wait, did we know though? Did she say it?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. I'm sad. Happy birthday, Feyre. We love you.
We love you.
Ninesar. It's a minor spring holiday to celebrate the end of seeding the fields and to pass out the first flower clippings of the season. Romantic.
I like flowers.
On to our high priestesses. They oversaw the ceremonies and rituals, recorded their histories and legends, and advised their lords and ladies in matters great and trivial. So, high priestesses and high lords are like church and state, in my opinion.
Basically.
Yeah. Their magic was drawn from their ceremonies and could be lethal if they decided to use it. There were 12 of them that governed their sisters across every territory in Prithian. As the High Lords ruled from their thrones, the High Priestess ruled from their altars, their children as powerful and respected as any lord's offspring. People approached Ianthe, kissing her silver rings and beseeching her for prayers for themselves, their family, or their lovers. Let's talk a little bit about these lesser fairies.
Okay.
Lucian invites Feyre to visit a nearby village. The spring court was in full bloom as always, the breeze heavily loaded with lilac, the brush flanking the path, wrestling with life, with no hint of the bog or the naga or any of the creatures who had such illness over the wood.
Nope, they're gone.
Oh, yep, they're gone. The village was halfway towards being built with pretty little buildings of stone and wood, makeshift structures over the supplies and livestock. The only things that seemed absolutely finished were the large well in the center of the town and what looked to be a tavern. Feyre thought she might as well have been in her own village, back home, a much nicer, newer village, but the layout, the focal points, all the same.
I love how the importance is the water and the beer.
Yeah. Feyre wanted to help rebuild the villages nearby, but it was clear on her trip with Lucian that they did not want her help. Lucian told Feyre they were under the mountain in camps in a network of tunnels, thousands of them crammed into chambers and tunnels with no light, no air for 50 years, and it was forbidden to speak of it. Some went mad and started preying on each other when Amarantha forgot to order her guards to feed them. Damn, talk about PTSD.
Yeah, they're the ones that need the
50
help.
years?
Let her roam around.
Yeah.
Let her be
that's
free.
wild.
She just exchanged one prison for the next.
We do meet a new type of fairy, a water wraith, a type of lesser fairy that had delicate, pointed face and spinely webbed fingers, full sensuous lips revealing teeth as sharp and jagged as a pike's, and cold black eyes. Her nose was a little more than 2 slits, and delicate gills flared beneath her ears. If they go hungry, everything and anything is game for dinner. Tamlin describes them as gluttonous. Alice said not one fairy would ever help them. Too many have gone to a watery grave from their hunger. Wouldn't want to walk into one of those.
Nope, I'd rather have them on my good side, just like Feyre did.
Yes. We learn about the Tith. Twice a year, usually around summer and winter solstice, each member of the spring court, whether they're high fae or lesser fairy, must pay a Tith, depending on their income and status. It's how they keep the estate running, how they pay for things like sentries and food and servants. In exchange, Tamlin protects them, rules them, helps them when he can. It's give or take. They got to pay their taxes. We all do.
Yeah. But really, 3 months after they get back, is that
I know.
really like the best time when they're still trying to rebuild? You couldn't give
I
them until
know.
summer. I think that was a little ridiculous. But
Yeah,
what do I
especially
know?
because they have so much still at their manor and
They're not wanting for anything.
no,
So.
yeah. And they don't have magic. They can just fucking poof the food if they wanted. The High Lords, anyway.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Night Court. We'll be spending so much time here, I'm sure of it. Feyre finally makes it to the Night Court. She smelled jasmine first, and then saw a sea of stars flickering beyond golden pillars of moonstone that framed the sweeping view of endless snow-capped mountains. It was the most beautiful place she's ever seen. We've heard that before, though.
Well, now it's her new favorite place.
Rhysand's subject dwelled in the mountain beneath his exquisite palace, where they were forbidden to set foot. Amarantha wasn't very creative. Rhysand's court beneath the mountain had long been feared, and she chose to replicate it by violating the space of Prithian's sacred mountains. Feyre's room was a dream, fit for an empress, with marble floors and elegant details.
Ooh.
The City of Starlight. Although sunlight greeted Feyre and Rhysand as they winnowed there, they ended up on the foyer of someone's townhouse, like one she had visited before as a child. She thought to herself, this house was a home that had been lived in and enjoyed and cherished. And it was in a city. Best of both worlds, I guess.
Yeah, but this city was not on the original map of the Night Court.
No, it was not. Goes on in Valaris. We'll find
You'll
out.
find out.
Rhysand tells Feyre that a war is coming. The king of
Mhm.
Hybern had been planning his campaign to reclaim the world south of the wall for over 100 years. Amarantha was an experiment to see how easily and how long a territory might fall and be controlled by one of his commanders. He will
Yeah.
seek to remove Prithian from his way swiftly and thoroughly and shatter the wall at some point in the process. Rhysand didn't think the King of Hybern would strike with slaughter. Not at first. He's too smart to waste his forces here, to give the continent time to rally while we fight him if he makes his moves to destroy Prithian and the wall. It'll be through stealth and trickery to weaken them.
He has some dirty, dirty games he has up his sleeve.
I can't believe Amarantha was a test. I thought he was like pissed at her for this, but really he's just letting her do it to see what happens.
I mean, I don't think he was all that pleased that she went against him, but it definitely served a purpose.
Yeah, we should have known because he didn't do anything about it, at least for
Yeah.
50 years.
He was just watching and
Yeah.
taking notes.
Interesting. He's a smarter villain than Amarantha.
He is a smart and powerful villain.
Rhysand tells Feyre about the war for 2 reasons. He wants to know if Tamlin is willing to fight with them, if he can use his connection to the king to their advantage. He wants Feyre to also help him catch a Suriel. He has tried and failed twice. How has he tried and failed twice and Feyre has fucking done it her first time?
Because Feyre is the best.
Yeah.
And she is better than anybody.
The Suriel's probably scared shit of the Night Court High Lord.
He's like, I'm not being caught. If this tiny little human girl wants to talk to me, fine. If Rhysand
Yeah.
wants to talk to me, absolutely not.
Yeah. There's also a matter of her powers. Rhysand thought that Feyre should learn to control them before they consumed her.
Yes.
I think that's
She
a great
should.
idea.
Yeah. They're going to come out anyways, just like
Yeah.
Lucian says. And you can't stop them from appearing.
Yeah.
And not training her is just dangerous to everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of war, Mor tells Rhysand that there was another attack at a temple in Caesarea, a northern outpost in the Night Court and one of the few known towns. Almost every priestess slain, the trove looted. They don't know who it was that attacked, but they left the same tracks as last time. Small group, bodies that showed signs of wounds from large blades, and no trace of where they came from and how they disappeared. No survivors. The bodies weren't even found until a day later when a group of pilgrims came by. I love that it's pilgrims.
Yeah.
We're moving to Megan's favorite section of the episode.
Magic!
The magic. But we're going to start first with Feyre's powers, and then we'll go through all the other magic in the section.
Okay, fine.
So, the first power she gets, well, besides her super strength, is she was inside Lucian's head. She slipped through his mental walls. Thoughts slammed into her, images and memories, a pattern of thinking and feeling that was old and clever and sad, so endlessly sad and guilt-ridden, hopeless. That makes me so sad for Lucian.
Poor Lucian.
Poor Lucy, baby.
Oh, Lucy, baby.
Poor guy.
Hmm.
When Feyre finally expressed how she felt, Tamlin's powers blasted through the room. Windows shattered, furniture splintered, the box of paints and brushes and paper exploded into dust and glass and wood. In this moment, Feyre realized she had the power to wrap herself in a bubble of protection, a physical shield.
Comes in handy in that moment.
Yeah. In an argument with Rhysand, she felt not hot temper, but icy, glittering rage. Feyre describes it as feeling ice at her fingers, kissing her palms. She swore there was frost coating the book before she threw it at Rhysand's head. Ice melted to flame, and her fingers curled into fists, the wrath that made her want to rage and burn. We got some fire and ice going on over here.
Ooh. We got
Wonder who that's from.
Winter and autumn court.
Yeah. Feyre was able to grow claws like the one that had shredded through her undergarments time and time again.
Ugh. Okay. I don't know why we needed to describe it like that, but whatever, Feyre.
When Tamlin locked Feyre in the manor, she was cocooned in darkness and fire and ice and wind. A cocoon that melted the ring off of her finger. A power from Rhysand.
So we really just haven't... I do like that one. I think the only ones we haven't seen anything from is Dawn and Summer, I think.
Yeah, because you said fire was autumn.
Yeah, ice would be winter. We've seen the
spring.
claws
Yeah.
from spring. The day court, Rhysand says, was the wind, the shield. And then obviously, the darkness that she cocooned around herself would obviously be Rhysand, as well as going into Lucian's mind is a power from Rhysand.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, both from Rhysand. Interesting. No wonder he's the most powerful. He does have the scariest powers.
Yeah.
I'd be more scared of him than Tamlin, I think, in this world.
Yes, for sure.
All right, so now let's get to the rest of the magic in the section. Rhysand is tucking Feyre through their mind bond. Feyre thinks it's a summoning, like some servant's bell. There was a warming magic that kept the palace and the night court balmy.
Yeah, he's just heating his
Interesting.
house, like he says.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just heating it. Who doesn't heat their house in the winter?
Exactly.
We learned that there are 3 solar courts. The nights are far more beautiful and our sunsets and dawn are exquisite, but they do adhere to the laws of nature. The other courts are the nature of the seasonal courts, linked to their high lords. Their magic and will keep them in eternal spring, winter, fall, or summer. But the solar courts, day, dawn, and night, are more of a symbolic nature. I love
Mhm.
that little tidbit about that.
Yeah,
Love learning about the world.
me too.
Rhysand and Feyre's bond is described as a bridge between them, and at either end is a door to their respective minds like a shield. Sometimes Feyre unwittingly has a shield up. Sometimes, when emotions seem to be running strong, that shield vanishes. And sometimes, when those shields are open, you might as well be standing at the gates to her mind, shouting her thoughts across the bridge to Rhysand. Sometimes he hears them, sometimes he doesn't.
Yep.
Interesting. I like the way they described
Interesting.
that. Very easy to picture.
Mm-hmm.
Rhysand and Feyre have an argument in their minds as he tries to teach her to shove him out and use her shields.
Yep.
Rhysand also explains what winnowing is when Feyre asks how vanishing works. It's like 2 different points on a piece of cloth. One point is your current place in the world. The other one, across the cloth, is where you want to go. Winnowing is like folding the cloth so that 2 spots align and the magic does the folding. That's cool. I want to be a winnowing person.
I know. I would love to winnow places. You know how many things I could do?
Oh my God. I would literally get to wake up way late and just walk to work one step. Amazing.
Yes.
That would be so great. Walk to the grocery store. That would be awesome.
Right?
Lastly, we have for the magic section is Tamlin also has the ability to create a shield and uses it to lock Feyre up in the house for, air quotes, safety.
I can't. Disgusting. Disgusting. I'm in disgust.
Absolutely disgusting.
I'm not even angry. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, I know. And there was a moment too where he's like, okay, I hear you, and loosens the reins, and then right back, like nothing even happens.
But you know he just didn't even
I
mean
know.
it when he's literally like, "Ugh, that scene makes me sick every time.
I
When I read it the
know.
first time, when I read it this time, and he literally almost like hurts her if she
Yeah.
didn't shield. And then he's like almost begging on his knees, like holding on to her, like, please forgive me. I'll never do that to you again. I'll never hurt you again. It just, I don't know. I just
Yeah.
felt not good.
Manipulation.
Yeah, it's just really abusive at this point.
Yeah.
She's been through so much trauma, and you're basically just using that against her and manipulating her even more instead of trying to take care of her when you say that's what you want to be doing.
Right.
And then you know she's has anxiety about being locked up from under the mountain where she was in a cell for literally 3 months, and then you lock her in the house?
Yeah.
That's sick. It's sick.
Like, what did he think she was going to say when he got back? If she was there?
Well, his
He thought
rage
he was just going to be
his
like
rage would probably be down, and he would, do what he always does and just be like, "I'm so
begging her for
sorry.
forgiveness.
I
Yeah.
didn't mean it. I should have never
Manipulator.
done that to you, and I'll be better," and whatever. Like, I get he has his own shit, but honestly, like, there's no excuse. Literally, when I finished reading this the first time around, I had, spoiled some things for myself. But I even said after the first book, when I read it the first time, I love Tamlin. I will never love anybody else. I was in that delusional phase like everybody goes through. And then reading this
Me.
whole part 1 just broke my heart. Like,
Yeah.
Tamlin ripped my heart out. He became someone I never thought that he was capable of being. But reading it around the second time, like, I can see how he was this person.
Yeah.
So,
Also, I feel like Sarah, that's why she fucking made it a happy ending. She wanted to rip our hearts out, Megan.
yeah.
She wanted to. But without further ado, let's dive into our plot, notable lines, and some assumed foreshadowing.
Oh, here we fucking
It's
go.
going to be a long ride. I hope everyone has their wine.
Yes, let's take a sip before we start this section
Okay.
because it's a long one.
Yes.
Okay. So before chapter 1 starts, we kind of have this like prologue, but it's not called that. And it's basically Feyre just having a nightmare about the last task that Amarantha gave her under the mountain. And that was the task where she had to stab and kill the innocent fairies with the Ashwood daggers. When she gets to the third fairy, this time, instead of it being Tamlin, it is herself, and she stabs herself with the Ashwood dagger. And this is just setting us up for how kind of this first part is going to go. Feyre is in a deep, deep, deep depression and has a lot
Mhm.
of anxiety and PTSD and trauma from being under the mountain.
Yeah.
Chapter 1. So it picks up right where we left off, and that is her coming out of the nightmare that she just had. And she wakes up and she needs to throw up. It's been 3 months since under the mountain, and she is still struggling. She has to look around the room and make sure that she is actually in the manor house and not still in her prison cell under the mountain.
Mhm.
She talks about her struggles with her new immortal strength, like Amanda said, and she finds the dark ink still on her left hand and wonders if Rhysand might be watching her through the tattoo or through the eye on her hand because she hasn't heard from him in 3 months. And she kind of is a little concerned about this. She's like, why
Yeah,
haven't I heard from him? I
I
thought,
know.
she's like, I can't forget about this bargain because it's literally tattooed on my hand, but could he really forget about me? She kind of feels like that's impossible. So she's
I
like,
know.
where is he?
I feel like she's kind of glad, but also is like, "What the hell's going on?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So this is actually my notable line for chapter 1, page 6. The eye etched into the center of my palm seemed to watch me, calm and cunning as a cat. Its slitted pupil wider than it had been earlier that day, as if it adjusted to the light, as any ordinary eye would. I scowled
Hmm.
at whoever might be watching through the tattoo.
We know who's watching through the tattoo.
Mm-hmm. And he is, I betcha.
Yes.
He's
So
just
she had
waiting for the right time to show up.
exactly. He needs to make an entrance.
Yeah.
So she hasn't said anything to anybody about why Rhysand hasn't shown up to get her for this bargain that she made under the mountain because she doesn't want to accidentally summon him and make her now participate in the bargain. She's kind of flashing back though to the time under the mountain with him at the end when they were safe from Amarantha. And, she's feeling all these emotions for the guilt that she feels from being under the mountain, everything that she went through. She is kind of remembering, though, what happened at the end of Under the Mountain when she was having her last conversation with Rhysand, and he tells her to be glad of her human heart and pity those who don't feel anything at all. But at this moment in time, she's just wishing that her heart had changed with the rest of her because she just cannot handle the feelings that she is feeling.
Mhm.
When she gets back into the room, Tamlin is still asleep in bed, and she remembers that she did all of this for him, that she wrecked herself and her mortal soul, and now she has to live with it because she did all of this for her love of Tamlin.
Mhm.
She gets back into the bed, and Tamlin's breath is deep, but now with her fate ear, she feels like he can hear her when she gets up to throw up because sometimes she'll hear his breath catch,
He
which
definitely hears her.
it's just so annoying. Like, why can't you go in there and check on her? I
Yeah.
just don't understand. There's no excuse for you not to go into the bathroom and check on your fiance
I
and
know.
see if she's okay. It
Like, what
makes
the fuck is wrong with you?
no sense. Like, you love her, you want to protect her, you want to do all these things. Well, protect her from her dreams, protect her from her depression and her
Yeah.
anxiety and her trauma. Like,
Like,
what?
the least he could do is when she's done, just ask her if she's okay. Like, you don't
Yeah.
even do that. You don't even have to get
Yeah.
up to do that. Just ask her if she's okay.
Or cuddle her in close. Don't pretend
Yeah.
like you're still fucking sleeping. But
Douchebag.
she says he never wakes up. She's giving him the benefit of the doubt. Tamlin, though, is also having nightmares as he also wakes from sleep multiple nights. And the first time it happened, he ended up sleeping at the end of their bed, monitoring the door. They just have unspokenly decided to not let Amarantha win by acknowledging that she still torments them during their waking hours and sleeping hours. She just doesn't want to explain to him through all of this, even though she saved him and their people, that she broke herself. And she really didn't feel like an eternity would be long enough to fix her. And it
So
kind of
sad.
just makes me so sad. But this is kind of how Feyre felt when she first got to the spring court, even when they
Yeah.
were in that pool of starlight. And she
Mhm.
jokes and says that even if she drank all of this, she doesn't know if she would ever be happy. And so she already had kind of this trauma from her childhood. And now it's just even worse.
Yeah,
And who knows if she's ever going to be able to come out of this.
I know. She's definitely gonna need a distraction.
She needs a supportive partner.
Yes. You're right.
Chapter 2. Tamlin is in his controlling ways. Feyre wants to go out with Tamlin and Lucian when they are going out to the village. Tamlin doesn't want her to go because he says it's still unsafe from Amarantha's beasts that haven't been hunted down yet. Tamlin says he doesn't have enough sentries to escort her into town, and she reminds him that she doesn't need an escort.
I also think it's interesting that when she goes out with Lucian, she doesn't see the bog, she doesn't see the Naga, she doesn't see any of these creatures. So I feel like this is kind of an excuse.
Yeah, we now learn in chapter 2 that they're engaged because we didn't know that before.
Yeah.
And her ring seems so pretty though. I think I would love that, the
I
golden band
know.
with the emerald square cut of the
Yes. I
stone.
love the gold band. My aura
Yeah,
ring is gold band.
and I love emerald, so I think
Yeah.
like the ring must be beautiful.
No wonder it was the happiest day of her life. It was the ring.
It was the ring, it wasn't anything else. But basically, she needs to get out of the house because she is sick of wedding planning. And the only break she had from all of it was during winter solstice, which Amanda described to us earlier. And that's when she notes that it's her birthday as well, but she didn't tell anybody about it because, she's fucking depressed.
Yeah.
And she says that she received enough gifts on winter solstice, and with their wedding coming up, she felt like she didn't need any more gifts. Which, I mean, this girl went from having nothing, so she's not used to receiving gifts anyways. But,
Yeah.
like, she really didn't tell her fiance and her friends that it's her birthday.
I
That
know.
is super concerning. So basically, there are 2 weeks before the wedding celebrations at this point in time, and she's just feeling so stir crazy. And she's literally begging Tamlin to go out with him, but he keeps saying it's not safe, especially not for you. They have been arguing about this for months, and every time she's wanted to go to the nearby village to help rebuild what Amarantha had burned down, Tamlin tells her that people see her as a blessing and of stability for their court. And if something ever happened to her, that would ruin that stability that they're trying to recreate now that Amarantha is dead. Feyre reminds him, though, that the wards are back up. And Tamlin says that some of the beasts slipped through before the wards were repaired, like Amanda explained to us earlier. That just the other day, Lucian hunted down 5 Naga. Lucian had lied to Feyre and said that he fell off his horse when she wondered why he was looking a little injured. Tamlin also says that he can't do what he needs to do if he's worrying about her. I just can't. I can't. I can't. I can't. I
Excuses,
can't.
excuses, excuses. She's
Yeah, it doesn't.
Faye now. She's super strong.
Like, she literally killed 2 or 3 Naga when she was human.
No
So
shit.
I can't.
What is he worried about? I feel like it's more, like you said, the control,
The control.
but also slightly maybe about other people seeing her out and trying to kidnap her to get to Camlin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he has some legitimate reasons on why he wants her to stay on the
Yeah, yeah.
grounds.
It
But
doesn't justify his actions at all, but I'm just trying to get in his brain, you know.
she's now wearing 2 daggers on her at all times, though, because she is scared shitless of life, basically.
Yeah.
And one
I
of the
would be too.
daggers is the one Lucian had originally gave her. And she also tells us that she hasn't been painting since she returned, that she went back into her painting room when they got back, looked around and hated it and walked out and hasn't returned since. We meet a new character, Ianthe, like Amanda introduced to us earlier. And, Feyre really likes her at this point in time. She's definitely a distraction to Feyre from everything that's going on, and she takes a lot off of Feyre's plate because Feyre is not this girly girl. She never has been,
Yeah.
and she doesn't want to make decisions about this wedding. And with her depression and her anxiety and her trauma, she's like, if people can do things for me at this point in time, I'm just going to let them do it because I just don't care. So now that she can't go out with Tamlin and Lucian to the village, she has to sit there and listen to Ianthe go on and on about a seating chart, which just sounds fucking terrible, even if you don't
Miserable.
have trauma and depression.
Yeah. Like, fuck that. Who wants to do that?
And Ianthe's like, this person can't sit here and this person can't sit here. And Feyre's like, I don't even know who the fuck these people are anyway, so I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Put them wherever you want. I don't care.
Yes. She kind of just is like, I don't really care. I just want to learn how to fight and learn how to protect myself, which is so funny that all this wedding talk is going around her and she's thinking about training. But Ianthe told Tamlin that it wouldn't make any sense for her to learn how to fight because if she needed to do that, then Prithian is not safe for them. Because if the Feyre the
Mhm.
Cursebreaker or Feyre the Savior is learning how to protect herself, then something must be amiss, and that cannot happen in that court right now.
Yeah. Which I can understand to an extent, but still, you can secretly train her.
Yeah, no, definitely. Nobody needs to know. Like, you're keeping these
Yeah,
powers that she has away from everyone. Like, who's going to know if you're training her at any point in the day?
I
And,
know.
Tamlin listened to both sides of both Feyre and Ianthe, and he chose Ianthe's side because he didn't
Mhm.
want the rumors to spread. And the fear that, if she was learning how to fight, what the consequences of that would be. And I just think it's so annoying. Like, you're not waking up to help her in the middle of the night when she's throwing up. Now you're not even picking your fiance's side. Like, just date
No.
Ianthe then. Like, what the fuck?
I know, literally. It sounds like they would be better suited together. They think the same, they act the same.
And later on, Feyre even thinks that.
Yeah. So I have a foreshadowing line in chapter 2, page 16, where Ianthe asks her if her mortal kin will be joining them for the wedding. And Feyre says, no, I hadn't thought to invite them, hadn't wanted to expose them to Prithian or to what I've become. I think this is foreshadowing that obviously the family is going to end up in Prithian, whether it's the Spring Court or the Night Court, and figure out that she's now High Fae.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't like fairies, so she definitely doesn't want them coming to this
Right.
wedding. She's like,
Yeah.
they don't like your kind. And Ianthe has to remind her it's our kind because you are now High Fae.
Mhm.
Fear also notes that she's uncomfortable with people calling her lady. She also notes that she doesn't think that she's Tamlin's mate as far as she knows, that there is no mating bond between them.
Might have a prediction about that later.
And this is where she says that she feels Ianthe would be a better mate for Tamlin based on their looks and their strength and their power, which I think is a little ridiculous because I think Feyre is stronger than all of them. She just doesn't know the strength of her power because nobody's training her.
I know, but we have
Uh,
Rhysand for that, so she will know her powers soon enough.
yes, we get to learn a little bit more about the high priestesses and the high lords, but I am going to skip over that because Amanda's already covered it and we have a lot
Yes.
more to get through. Back to wedding planning.
Yes.
Hooray.
Yeah.
Ianthe wants to know what color flowers she wants for the wedding. Feyre says that the roses can be any color, but not red, because that gives her trauma, because it's reminding her of blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amarantha's hair. Ianthe notes that every element of this wedding needs to be perfect because it's going to send a message to the world, not just Prithian, of the new power and strength that the Sprint Court will have. And this is super important now that
Mhm.
Amarantha is gone. Feyre also hates her wedding dress that Ianthe picked out, and even though Tamlin thought it was ridiculous, he says that Ianthe knows what she's talking about, and just to go along with it, it's an important moment for Ianthe as well. And it's just annoying because this is basically Ianthe's wedding to Tamlin. It's
Yeah.
not Feyre and Tamlin's wedding.
Feyre
And
doesn't
she's
have one thing she wants for this wedding, not one thing.
nope. And when she does actually open her mouth to say, like, hey, like, I really just don't like this wedding dress. Like, I want something else. Tamlin's like, well, Ianthe knows best. You don't know
Yeah.
best. Just wear the dress. Who gives a fuck? And she's like, well, I kind of do. This is my fucking wedding.
Yeah. That'll be the day that someone tells me what to wear.
Yeah, and then Ianthe has the nerve to ask Feyre, "Are you at least excited for this wedding?" And Feyre's like, "Well, yeah, I guess it's gonna be the happiest day of my life. Like it was when he asked me to marry him, but
Yeah.
I certainly felt that way then, but I don't know if I
The
feel
life
that
is
way
being
now."
sucked out of her from this wedding
Yeah.
planning.
So of course Ianthe is just like, "Of course it's gonna be the best day. This is cauldron blessed."
The cauldron.
And, Feyre just keeps looking at her tattoo, which I don't know, she's kind of obsessed with staring at it. But Ianthe is
I
like,
feel like
well,
it's the anticipation. Like,
yeah,
when is he
she's
gonna show up? Could be any time.
yeah. So Ianthe's like, we'll just get you some gloves. Later that night, it is late when Tam Tam gets back from being out on the town with Lucian doing whatever they're doing out there, and we don't know. And they have sex. It's pretty
Bow
dirty
chicka
too.
wow wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was
I,
smutty, I have to say.
I was like, "Ugh."
Megan's like, ugh, I'm not even gonna read this part. Flip the
Yeah, I was like,
page.
skim. Already read it
Skim.
one time. I don't need to read it again. So after their little sexy time, she asks what she'll be called. And this is the discussion of high ladies. And he tells her, you'll never be high lady. And then
Yes.
she asks, well, what about Lucian's mom? And he tells her that, oh, she's a lady of the autumn court. Like, you'll be lady of the spring court.
So my notable line for chapter 2, page 24, Tamlin says, High lords only take wives, consorts. There has never been a high lady. Feyre asks, but Lucian's mother. Tamlin says, she is the lady of the autumn court, not high lady, just as you will be the lady of the spring court. They will address you as they address her. They will respect you as they respect her. This doesn't sound like respect.
No, it doesn't.
This sounds like there's no way you'll be the most powerful. Your husband will always be more powerful than you. But guess what? I also think this is foreshadowing, which I'll explain more in my prediction section.
Okay. And then she tries to push back a little bit, though, after he tells her this. And she's like, but Lucian's mom. He's like, don't say another male's name while we're being intimate. Rawr.
Rawr.
I can't. So then he starts doing some more dirty things to her, and it's just gross. Okay, chapter 3.
Time.
Tamlin is feeling the guilt, so he lets Lucian take Feyre to the village.
Oh, thank you, Tamlin.
Thank you so much for letting me leave the grounds. You're the best High Lord ever. She wants to walk, but Lucian is like, absolutely not. We're taking the horses, which I don't really know what them being on horses and on foot would be the difference of when they're fast. But
Yeah.
anywho.
I was going to say maybe so they can get away faster, but you're right. They have fucking super speed powers. So,
yeah. Lucian is getting a hard time from Feyre. She is not happy that Lucian lied to her. And she tries to shove him off his horse. He says that he didn't tell her because Tamlin asked him not to. She's like, I am not made of glass, dude, and you can tell me things. But Lucian says, well, I technically didn't lie. I did fall off my horse, but it was only after one of the Naga tackled him. Technicalities with these people. Lucian is just looking at her with such pity, but she doesn't want Lucian's pity. Lucian tries to explain that they need order and rank right now to create stability for their court, like blah, blah, blah. Same shit Ianthe's saying, same thing Tamlin saying. She's just like, I don't care. I need stability. I need someone to help me.
Yeah. Like, geez, I feel suffocated just listening to you and reading it. Can't even imagine how she feels.
And this comment gets me. Lucian's like, you don't even know how hard it is for Tamlin to let you off the estate grounds. He's under a lot of pressure. And she's like, but I was let off the grounds when I was a human and the borders were far less safe.
Yeah.
And then this comment also really gets to me. Lucian says that he didn't care for her the way that he does now after what happened under the mountain. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what do you mean he didn't care for her the same way he does now? Wasn't that the whole point? They had to, they were in love, and that's why the curse broke. What do you mean? You mean he actually didn't love her until she went under the mountain? Like, he lied and said that he loved her when she was sleeping? What?
Unbelievable.
I don't know. I was like, what the fuck kind of comment is that?
Yeah. That was not right. He should not have said that. But also, no fucking wonder there's no mate bond. I feel like they're in love over their trauma. Like, the trauma is the only thing that keeps them together at this point.
Yeah, I just can't. Anyways, she thinks Lucian is being a prick, and Lucian is like, isn't this what all humans want or wish for, as a handsome high lord to sweep them off their feet and to shower them with gifts? And she's like, go kick rocks.
Yeah, like, who fucking wants that? We want love and respect.
So then we learn about what the tith is, and Amanda already went over that, and Feyre is pissed that she has to ask. They just keep her in the dark, and it's just so awful. If you just kept her up to date and communicated with her, it would be so much easier on them. Yes, exactly.
Also, I feel like they use it as an excuse that this curse, they couldn't tell her, like they wanted to tell her but couldn't. And now all of a sudden you can tell her and you're still keeping it from her. So did you actually want to tell her?
No, definitely not. Lucian is like, let's just get through the wedding. Let's get through the tithe. And then when all of that is over, we'll talk to Tamlin about loosening these reins. She's like, well, I don't want to marry a high lord. I just want to marry Tamlin. And you know what? That's kind of a dumb statement for her to make. I will say that was not the best thing for her to
Yeah,
be
like,
saying.
they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, Lucian is like, one doesn't exist without the other, and you knew that. Like, he's always been the High Lord of the Spring Court.
Yeah.
And this is, when Lucian is like, please don't make me pick.
This is where my notable line is for chapter 3, page 27. Lucian says, Tamlin is my high lord. He gives an order, I follow it. Feyre says, you didn't have that mentality when you worked around his commands to send me to see the Suriel. He says, I was desperate then. We all were. But now we need order, Feyre. We need rules and rankings in order if we're going to stand a chance of rebuilding. So what he says goes, and I am the first one the others look to. I set the example. Don't ask me to risk the stability of this court by pushing back. Not right now. He's giving you as much free reign as he can. So I feel like he keeps saying, not yet, not yet, not yet. But like, fucking when, bro?
And what does he mean? Like, they were all desperate then, and he let her go see the Suriel? That had nothing to do with the curse.
Yeah, that's true. Like,
Doesn't make
what?
any sense.
Did he think the Suriel was going to be able to tell him about the curse?
Maybe, I don't know, but the
I
Suriel
thought they were
didn't.
all forbidden to say anything to her about it.
I know, but is the Suriel within the rules of Amarantha? Because it's like
True, maybe
the
not.
old creature, but I mean, he still didn't tell her.
Yeah.
Lucian keeps saying, like, you don't understand. You don't understand. Like, you didn't hear your neck snap like we all did, and you died. You came back to life, but you were dead. And we all had to hear that sound of your neck cracking.
Yeah.
And that's when, he talks about how his love didn't get to come back to life. There was no magic spell to bring her back. Maybe he's a little bitter, but
Yeah. I
anywho.
would be too. No offense.
They finally arrive at the village, thank God, because Feyre is sick of hearing Lucian rambling on about Tamlin and
Making
Tamlin's
excuses for him.
reigns. Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically, no one wants her to help. They call her Feyre Cursebreaker, and they're like, your debt is paid. The debt is paid. And no one will let her help. So she's like, great, I'm finally out of the house. I get to do something besides wedding planning, and nobody
Yeah.
wants my help.
I feel like this kind of sets the tone for the fairy world too. Like, obviously, there's always a give and take. There's never just like a give. Even though they have so much, the High Lords and the High Fae, like, they still are expected to take as well.
Mhm.
And obviously, Feyre had nothing to take, so they didn't want to give.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, Lucian goes on to explain about the fairy camps and everything, and we already went over that,
Mhm.
which brings us to chapter 4.
Moving right along.
The wedding is approaching, and it's a few days before the wedding. Guests are arriving at the manor. They're having dinner after dinner, luncheons, picnics, hunts, and she was passed around from person to person, and she is just looking for this wedding to be over so that she doesn't have to talk to anyone for a long, long time.
Yeah, this sounds miserable.
Yeah, especially when you just want to cry in your bed all day.
Or you don't know anybody. Like, who wants to fucking talk to a bunch of strangers? Not one
Yeah,
person she knows is at this wedding besides Lucian and Ianthe
yeah. Mhm.
and Alice, who's probably working it.
Yeah, she's not at the wedding.
Yeah.
So now we're finally at the night before the wedding, and she's kind of just hiding against the wall. It's kind of just like what she was doing at the ball that her father threw for her when she returned from the fairylands the first
Mhm.
time. But Ianthe is hanging out with her, and Tamlin is working the room. He is in his element. He can act any way he wants, but he's laughing, he is grinning, he is having a good old time. But there are some high fae males who keep eyeing Ianthe, and they're kind of circling them, and Feyre catches that. Though maybe she does catch it, but she's just, what can I do for you, Feyre? Is there anything that you need the night before your wedding?
Mhm.
And she was already wearing a spring green gown that Ianthe had gotten for her. Alice had gotten her ready, but was unnervingly silent as Feyre got ready, which is not like Alice.
I know. I feel like she kind of doesn't want her to marry Tamlin.
I
Like, she doesn't want
know.
to say anything that will get in between them, but also not saying anything says everything, Alice.
Exactly, because Alice always has opinions and she always has
Yeah.
a lot to say, and she is not saying anything.
Mhm.
So These high fae males finally approach Ianthe and they are flirting. And like you said earlier, we meet them. They are Braun and Hart. And finally, they glance towards Feyre after they're flirting with Ianthe. I don't know if it's not getting anywhere or whatever. They finally notice that Feyre is standing there. And Ianthe introduces her as the savior of Prythian. They say that they know that because they were under the mountain. And Braun says, "Congratulations. Tomorrow is a fitting ending to how the Under the Mountain ended." And Feyre's depression is so strong that she feels like she'd rather be burning in hell. That would be a
Yeah.
better ending than marrying Tamlin.
Yeesh. If that's not a sign that they shouldn't get married, I don't know what is.
She said she'd rather be burning in hell, and that would
Yeah.
be better than marrying Tamlin. And I'm like, so why are we marrying Tamlin?
I
Why did we say
know.
yes to this?
That's
Well, she
wild.
probably feels like she has nowhere else to go. She's like, I'm literally
Yeah.
trapped here, which probably doesn't help her trauma either.
I think too, she's saying earlier to herself, like, she did all of this for Tamlin, for her love for Tamlin. And
Yeah, and for his
I feel like,
people.
yeah. So I feel like now she kind of feels forced into it almost. Like
Yeah,
she has to go through
obligated.
with it. Yeah.
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 So Ianthe's like, of course, this is the perfect ending. This is cauldron blessed. Cauldron blessed. Like Ianthe, that's like she gives it's a run-on sentence for her. And the males agree with her, bowing their heads, in agreement. And Braun goes on to say that he was at the trial with the Midden worm and that she was brilliant and wants to hunt with her. They think that she was brave and inspiring, and they just can't wait to see what she will do. And she's like, please kill me.
I will never hunt with you.
Yeah.
So this is actually my notable line for chapter 4, page 36. Braun or Hart, I don't remember who it was, but one of them says, "Have you heard from the High Lord at all?" No. He's probably running scared now that Tamlin's got his power back. Feyre says, "Then you don't know Rhysand very well at all." Ooh, is she sticking up for him?
Yeah, she kind of is.
I think so too.
I think she just
That is
and she didn't even,
something.
it's not even like she thought about it. Like it just automatically came out.
Yeah. But it's so funny because all of her interactions with Rhysand, even now in this section, she pretends that she hates him, but she doesn't really hate him.
I mean, he calls her out on that too. He's like, "Do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
love me? Do you?"
Yeah. Like,
Oh,
again, I feel like she's obligated to hate him. But
yes. Yes. So after she snaps at these two high fae males about Rhysand, she's like, "You know what? I'm gonna go to bed." Tamlin's still laughing with his friends. I'm just gonna leave the room before he can spot me.
yeah, he ain't gonna miss me.
No, he barely but also like, why isn't he with her?
I
Like,
know.
this is the
They're
night
getting
before your
married
wedding.
tomorrow. Yeah.
I can't. Fuck him.
I fucking can't either.
She's in bed. Of course, she has a nightmare and she's
Mhm.
scanning the room and she keeps reminding herself that this is real, that she's in the manor and they're not still under the mountain. It is now the wedding day. She is hating her wedding dress even more than she did the first time she saw it, with all the tulle and the chiffon. It is not like any of the loose gowns that she's used to wearing. Alice dressed her and kind of just hummed to herself, but again, said nothing. Tamlin had laughed at her when he had first seen the dress, and now she knows why. There are about 300 chairs assembled in the courtyard. Ianthe would sanction and bless their union before sundown. As a representative of all 12 high priestesses, they hinted that they pushed to be present, but she convinced them to let her do it on their own, which is kind of weird.
I know.
Like, I don't know. She's
I
getting
don't
too
know
big
either.
for her britches, I think, that Ianthe.
Right now. I feel like she literally wants to be Feyre.
She
She's like,
wants to be
"Look at her."
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alice fixes her dress and gets her ready to walk down the aisle. She tells her not to be nervous, and Alice says that she knows that she is because she's fidgeting when Feyre tries to deny it. She tells her that she looks beautiful, which is nice of Alice to say because I feel like she wouldn't fully lie to Feyre.
Yeah.
And she tells her, "But you look like you're going to a funeral and not like your wedding." She's like, "Just suck it up. It will be over quicker than you know it."
So she can physically see the depression on her face.
Yeah, I'm kind of mad at Alice for not being like, "Are you okay, honey?"
I
I don't know.
know. Or just being like, if you don't want to go through with it, don't do it.
Yeah, we'll
That's
find a
what I
way
would
out.
want someone to say to me if I was looking like I was going to a funeral.
Yeah,
I would need the reassurance, like, you don't have to do this.
yeah.
But
But that would be going against her, master, her High
true.
Lord, too. And
True, yeah.
after he saved her nephews, like, she probably feels like
Yeah.
she owes him everything.
Yeah. Just like Lucian.
Yeah. So the doors open and she's about to walk down the aisle when she sees Tamlin standing there in a green tunic and a gold crown of laurel leaves on his head. And she stops dead though, not because of how handsome Tamlin is, but because there are red and white rose petals covering the aisle that she is about to walk down.
Wait,
When
didn't she tell Ianthe not to get fucking red flowers?
she said any color but
Spiteful.
red.
What the fuck? Why did she get red then?
I don't know.
What a bitch.
What a bitch. She's literally I wonder if there were no red rose petals, if she would have walked down the aisle with no issues. But anyways, she now forces her gaze back up to Tamlin, and they're all unaware of the extent of how truly broken she is inside. She feels like she is unfit to be wearing white, that her hands are so filthy, and that everybody here must be thinking this. They have to see how awful of a person she is for what she did under the mountain, killing those innocent fays.
Mhm.
Now she is 10 steps from Tamlin, so she has made it somewhat down the aisle, and everyone is watching her, and she stops. She feels like she is going to have a panic attack, like she's going to throw up right in the middle of the aisle over those rose petals.
Mhm. And this is actually another notable line I have for chapter 4. Starts on page 41, goes to page 42. She is thinking in her head, the thing inside me was roiling now, my body shaking with the building force of it as it hunted for a way out. Forever. I would never get better, never get free of myself, of that dungeon where I spent 3 months. So she's already feeling very trapped.
Mhm. And those red rose petals are not
Yeah.
helping. There's
Like, you
blood.
shouldn't feel like that on your wedding day while you're walking down to your husband to be.
Yeah, she's just thinking about Amarantha and Under the Mountain. She's not thinking
Yeah.
about love and marriage and
Like, clearly,
Tamlin,
she's in no state to get married. And Tamlin, you should fucking recognize this, bro.
for
Come on.
sure. Now Tamlin is calling out to her, and he puts his hand out to grab her, to pull her towards the altar. But if she turns away, people will start talking, but she just couldn't make the last few steps. She was going to fall apart in front of all of them. It was going to happen. But she
Mhm.
keeps thinking in her head, save me, please, get me out.
Yeah, she's like, "Help me, help me, help me."
Yeah.
So sad.
Tamlin takes a step towards her now, and she retreats a step back. His mouth tightens, and the crowd starts getting anxious. Like, what is happening? Why isn't she going up to the altar? So
Yeah.
Ianthe tries to save the moment and is like, come, bride, come to the altar. And she just couldn't do it. She's like, I can't even breathe. Never mind, walk forward. But she had no problems taking a step back.
Yeah.
And that's when thunder cracks behind them and people start screaming and falling back all over themselves. And that's when Rhysand comes into the wedding, crashes in, and says, hello, Feyre darling.
Hello, Feyre darling.
What an epic way to end a chapter.
Epic.
Epic way to
I
ruin a wedding.
Yeah. I had a feeling the whole time, obviously, there's so much foreshadowing. Like, this wedding's not going to happen. At least not yet. But I was not expecting Rhys to show up in this moment.
I know. When I
Yeah.
read it the first time, I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah. That's pretty much how I was. I was like, what the fuck? Not taking notes for this section yet. Got to read the next chapter.
Yeah. Now we are in chapter 5. Feyre says she shouldn't be surprised, not when Rhysand likes to make a spectacle of everything he does and pissing Tamlin off to be an art form.
True.
He is now standing beside her, darkness leaking from him. Tamlin and Lucian and the other sentries have their swords half drawn, but Rhys just raises his hand and they all freeze. Like, that's all he has to do is raise a hand. It probably wasn't even fully all the
Yeah.
way up. It was probably
Yeah.
just a and they're
And
like,
didn't they say there was like 300 or something seats?
yeah.
So there's 300 high fae of the
Mhm.
spring court, and they're
Mhm.
still dead silent when he goes.
Yeah, they're all,
Awkward.
like, falling over themselves, like, screaming to
Yeah,
get away.
yeah.
Ianthe is even backing away from the altar, and the
She's a
color
runner.
has drained from her face.
Yeah.
Not so powerful now, are ya, Auntie?
Well, she freaking runs away from every danger. First under
True.
the mountain, she's gone. Now Reese, and she's gone again.
Yep, now Reese is looking at Feyre and he's clicking his tongue at her silk gloves. He's like, trying to hide your tattoo. Are you kidding me?
I can still see you.
I can still see it and I can still feel everything you're feeling.
Mhm.
Tamlin tells him to get the hell out. And Reese is like, oh, I don't think so. Not when I need to call in my bargain with Feyre. Feyre is thinking, no, this can't be happening right now, which is just so hilarious to me. Like, what do
I
you mean? You
know.
just wanted to get out of this and now you're like, no?
That's what I'm saying. She acts like she hates him so much, but really, this is your savior that you're begging Tamlin to be. He is literally
Yep,
what?
saving your ass right now.
Yeah.
She's delusional. It's okay.
I
She's got some PTSD. We'll let it slide for right
Yeah,
now.
we'll let it slide.
Reese is like, but you can't break the bargain. There will be consequences if you try to break this. The crowd is still falling all over themselves, trying to leave the ceremony space. And Reese is like, well, I gave you 3 months of freedom, and now I'm here to collect the bargain. Like, time is up. I gave
Yeah.
you 3 months, and now it is time for her to come and spend the week with me. Tamlin says that he better not take her, but Rhysand says, I'll be taking her now because I thought the ceremony was over. Tamlin's like, let us just finish this ceremony. And Rhysand's like, your high priestess even thinks that it's over because she's gone. Tamlin says, name your price. And Rhysand's like, don't even bother. There is nothing you can say or do that's going to make me break this bargain. Feyre is freaking out though, because she knows that she'll be going back to the night court where Amarantha had modeled under the mountain after, and she doesn't want to be locked under a mountain again.
Understandably.
Yes, exactly. And there's just more back and forth between Tamlin and Rhysand, like, you're not gonna take her, I'm taking her, I'm not breaking the bargain, break the bargain, like blah blah blah, stupid shit.
I imagine Feyre is doing that, like looking to the right, looking
Yeah,
to
it's like
the
a tennis
left.
match.
Yeah.
And Lucian is standing there looking at Tamlin like he's crazy. There's anger and shock on Lucian's face that Tamlin's not doing anything about this, really. Like, he's saying, you're not going to take her, but he's not doing anything.
Yeah.
And that really shouldn't be surprising, Lucian, because Tamlin never does anything.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, under the mountain, Tamlin is back.
So Rhysand's like, okay, see y'all. She'll be back in a week. They disappear and they end up in this palace on top of a mountain range that she smells the jasmine. She can see the stars. And Rhysand says, you're welcome, you know. And she says, for what? And she's like, well, for saving you when you asked.
Duh.
Rhysand says, I heard you say no. She tries to deny it, that she didn't say anything, but he turns her hand over to examine the eye he had tattooed there, saying he heard her through the bargain. Again, like, I just don't understand why she is not understanding that he heard her beg for help. He heard
Yeah.
her say no through the bond. Feyre wants to be taken back. She's like, I want to go back home. And Rhysand's like, well, what a better time to take you here. Maybe Tamlin didn't notice that you were about to reject him in front of his entire court.
Oh, I think he noticed.
But Rhysand's like, well, now you can just blame it on me. She calls him a bastard, and he's like, well, your gratitude, as always, is just so great. He wants her to take off that ridiculous dress that she's in because she looks like a damsel in distress. And then he starts questioning her. Does Tamlin know that you throw your guts up every night? And she's like, get out of my head. And he's like, well, I don't like to be in your head. I don't like to be woken up every night by visions of you puking, sending it right down the bond. He doesn't appreciate having a front row seat when he's trying to sleep.
I feel like this is an excuse. Like, he wants her to know that he hears her and he's gonna be there for her, but
Yeah.
in his Rhysand way. Just like Feyre is in denial, so is he.
Well, he's trying to pull out any emotion but depression, I guess,
Yeah.
out of her.
Yeah.
Like, show some emotion, Feyre. Feyre wants to know where the rest of his court is. He says that they dwell in the mountain beneath them, but they are forbidden to set foot in his residence. He says that he presides over them, every once in a while, but under the mountain there usually rules itself, which is really interesting.
Mm.
She's like, well, are you going to take me there under the mountain? And
PTSD.
yeah. And he's like, no, this is my home, not there.
Mhm.
And that court is his occupation and he doesn't like the two to overlap very often. She wants to know if there's anybody else in the night court because it's so big. And he's like, well, there's people scattered here and there and they dwell and live and as they wish. And as he's walking away, Raisin makes a comment and she literally chucks a shoe at him. And now with her new strength and speed, he doesn't catch it and it smacks him right in the back of his head, which is just hilarious. And
Yeah,
then
that was funny.
she goes and picks up her other shoe and he's like, I dare you. And she's like, fuck you, and throws the other
She's
shoe at
like,
him.
"Oh, yeah?"
And he snatches it just inches from his face. And then he's looking her up and down and he's like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And then continues on his way because, he's Rhysand and that's how he likes to leave us, wanting more, not
Yeah.
knowing what the hell he's thinking or why he
Yeah.
says the things that he says. And she is on her way back to her bedroom when she hears a female voice that says, well, that went well. And Rhysand snarls at this person. And she's like, you know what? I'm just going to go to my room because I just don't want to deal with any of
Yeah.
this right now.
She's like, "I had a day."
Yes. So she arrives in her room, and Amanda's already described what it looks like to her. And she is just, ripping her wedding dress off, putting on new clothes that she finds in the wardrobe.
Yes. And this is actually my notable line for chapter 5, page 51. Feyre is just in her head at this point and says to herself, Tamlin had seen the hesitation, but had he understood that I was about to say no? Had Ianthe? I had to tell him, had to explain that there couldn't be a wedding, not for a while yet. Maybe I'd wait until the mating bond snapped into place, until I knew for sure it couldn't be some mistake, that I was worthy of him. Why do you think you're not worthy?
Right. She's worthy of anybody. It's
She's the
him
one that
that's
saved
not
them.
worthy of her. Yeah.
Yeah. She saved everybody, the whole world, not just Prithian. But
Yeah.
how are you not worthy, girl? Some self-esteem issues here.
Yeah. So she basically cries herself to sleep that night.
Yeah.
But I don't think she wakes up throwing up, which is interesting.
Ooh, true. I don't think she does either.
So the next morning, the two servants come in to get her ready for breakfast, and she feels that tug on her, and she knew where it was coming from. And she's like, I'm not a dog. And he's like, well, I didn't want you to get lost. And, there's fruits, juices, pastries, and she starts making herself a plate. This is when we learn more about the solar cores and the, nature cord. And she's like, wow, I can't believe how warm it is up here. And he's like, yeah, I don't really know why my ancestors built a palace fit for the summer core in the middle of a mountain range, but who am I to question?
Yep.
I just love the banter that he gives her.
I know.
It's just so perfect.
It's definitely light, but also what she needs right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He then accuses her of losing weight, and she's like, well, you've been digging through my head, so I'm not sure why you're so surprised by it. And he was like, well, only occasionally will I do that. And she wants to know how the bond works. And Amanda's explained it to us already, so I'm not going to do that. And, he really only goes rifling through her head when he can't tell if her nightmares are real or imagined because they're that detailed and that scary to her that he really has to
Wow.
double check and make sure she's not
Yeah.
actually under attack when she's having these nightmares.
I feel like that also means the emotion is so real. Like her fear is so real still. It's not just like you wake up and it's gone. Like she's still in it. She still has
Yeah.
to feel around, make sure she's safe in a safe environment and not in a dungeon and not in under the mountain. But
Yeah, and it's so bad that Rhysand, who's a super powerful high fae, has to make sure that it's real or if it's just
yeah,
imagined.
exactly.
And then he also heard her yesterday when she was screaming for anyone to help her get out of that wedding. It went right down the bond.
Hmm.
He tells her that she could train and to learn how to shield against someone like him, even with the bond bridging their minds. She ignores the offer and says, what do you want with me? You said you'd tell me this morning what it was. And he was like, well, I want you to learn how to read. And that is how chapter 5 ends. Chapter 6. Feyre is thinking, Rhysand wants me to learn how to read, but she doesn't want to do this. Rhysand reminds her that she is going to be a High Lord's wife, and she may be expected to maintain her own correspondence and maybe give a speech or two. And he also wants her to learn how to shield, which she knows both skills are necessary, but she doesn't want him to be the one teaching her. But he's really the only one offering to
I
teach her how to
know.
do anything.
Well, like, obviously, she wants Tamlin to be the one to teach
Right.
her because she's gonna marry him, but it's not gonna happen, girl, so you better take it where you can get it.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, what else are you gonna do with yourself while you're here?" And she's like, "Well, I don't get why it matters to you anyways." And he's like, "Well, I have a purpose for this, but I'm not gonna tell you what it is, and you'll have to work with me to find out." And
Yep.
that's when she breaks another fork in frustration.
This is my notable line for chapter 6. It's a combo between Reese and Feyre, page 58. Has anyone ever told you that you are rather strong for a high fae? Am I? I'll take that as a no. Have you tested yourself against anyone? Why would I? Because you were resurrected and reborn by the combined powers of 7 High Lords. If I were you, I'd be curious to see if anything else transferred to me during that process. I didn't pick up that she was stronger than regular High Fae until this moment, actually.
Yeah.
Because she breaks the forks and stuff, but I just assume it's just her new strength that she's not used to yet. But now I'm like, she's gonna have some
She
cool ass powers.
She is rather strong. Reason feels like she's doing this out of spite. Like she doesn't want to read or learn how to shield with him. And she's like, "Don't get me started about what you did to me under the mountain." And Reese goes still. His chest begins to move faster. And across the pillars behind him, she could have sworn she saw a shadow of wings, which I wonder what that reaction was.
I know.
Like, is he having a panic attack?
I don't know.
I didn't know, like, what that even now, I'm like, I wonder what that reaction was. So maybe we'll have to come back to this at the
Yeah.
end of our during our final thoughts.
Okay, I agree.
We then get to meet Morgan, who is Rhysand's cousin. She is super friendly and pulls Feyre into a hug, and she loves that Feyre is getting under Rhys's skin. She is excited to have company for once, and Rhys wants to know why she's not attending to her own duties. And she's like, "Well, I needed a break, and you told me I can come here anytime I like." Then we learn that, she is his cousin in the loosest of definitions, but is his
Mhm.
only surviving family. And this is the conversation where she's like, "Well, I didn't see you under the mountain." And Rhysand cuts Moore off from her saying anything about where she was when they were all there. And so Moore's like, "Okay, well, if you want company while you're here, just give a shout and I'll be there." And Fear's like, "Okay, thanks."
Sure. I was looking for peace and quiet here, but sure.
Yeah, you're nice enough, I guess.
Yeah. Poor Moore, though. She says there never is any visitors, so she's just wants a
She want
friend.
she wants a new friend.
Yeah.
They then head off for her reading and shielding lesson. At the table in front of her, there's a stack of books and an alphabet. And she's like, "I already know my alphabet. I'm not that stupid." And he's like, "Well, I know you're not stupid, but I don't know how much you know. So this is why I brought everything to you today."
Mhm.
And she's like, "Can't you just hire a tutor?"
Do you have to
And
torment me?
yeah, but he wants to help her.
Yeah.
So he makes her read a sentence. And that sentence was, "You look absolutely delicious today, Farah."
I love the sentences he makes her write. They're so
He,
funny. I was dying laughing the whole time.
yeah, he's trying to be a comedian, I guess,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
get a rise out of
Give her
her.
some happiness in her life or like shake off that depression a little.
Yeah, and while she's reading the sentence and sounding everything out, he's like, "Oh, good." And she's like, "I don't need your approval, sir."
Yeah.
So then he goes into her head saying, "Well, isn't it true that you look delicious today?" And she's like, "Get out." And he's like, "Make me, shove me out." He keeps telling her, "This is what happens when you leave your mental shield down. Anyone can come in, they could shatter her brain, hold her mind, and that she should be afraid of this," and makes her shove him out of her head. And when she does it, he tells her to shield it now and to block him and to keep him out so he can't get back in. She does it, and then he tells her that she can keep practicing, that she should keep practicing her alphabet and shielding. So do one task and then the other over and over again. She's like, "I owe you nothing. You owe me nothing after Under the Mountain. That let's just break this bargain. Like, this is ridiculous. I don't want to be doing this with you. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
enough is enough. He's like, I'm not your enemy. And she's like, well, Tamlin says that you are. And Rhysand's like, well, what do you think? Do you think that I'm your enemy? And she's like, well, you're doing a good job of making me feel like you are. And Rhysand's like, you're a liar.
Yeah. Like, liar. What do you mean? He's doing everything opposite of Tamlin and he's the enemy?
Yeah. And he's like, did you even tell your friends what I did under the mountain? And she's like, I don't want to talk about anything with them or with you about what happened there. And he's like, well, I guess it's easier for you to be coddled then. And she's like, I'm not being coddled. And he's like, yes, you were. You were wrapped up like a present yesterday, like you were his reward. And she's like, so? And he's like, so? And he's so angry. So after his rage in his eyes after that sentence of like, so what if I'm his reward? Rhysand's like, I'm gonna go. I'll be back in an hour. You keep practicing and I'll see you then. And an hour later, she is feeling exhausted, but she did it. She is practicing her alphabet. Everything looks good. And she's able to put up and down her shield with pretty much ease.
I
She keep
know.
she keeps him out when he tries to get back in.
That was pretty quick, though. I think it just shows actually how powerful she is that she learned that fast.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I also like that when he came back into the room, he kept a healthy distance away. And she wondered if he realized or had seen or heard or whatever through the bond the time that Tamlin snuck up on her. And she basically knocked Tamlin on his ass.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
took him out.
Yeah. I think he definitely was paying attention the entire time, even though he didn't show up for 3 months. I think he was checking in on her and only stepped in when he thought he needed to.
Yeah, or when she asked him to.
Yeah, exactly.
So, after practicing her shielding and her spelling, Rhysand then takes her to a tower. And in the center of this room, there is a table with a map on it. And on this map is all of Prythian with every court labeled but the Night Court. And it was just a blank space for the Night Court. Not even a mountain range was listed on it.
Mm.
And she's like, is this why you wanted me to learn how to read? Am I supposed to be embracing my lessons now? And he's like, just what do you see, Feyre? Cut the shit. And she's like, well, I see a world split into two. And he's like, well, do you want it to remain that way? And she's like, what do you mean? And she just starts thinking about her family. She's starting to get
Mhm.
panicky. And Reason's like, they'll be lucky if they'll be able to flee when the time comes that a war might be starting. And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, war is coming.
Yeah.
And that is how chapter 6 ends. So, chapter 7 is a doozy. There's a lot that happens here, but basically, it picks up right where we left off. And Feyre is begging Rhysand not to invade the mortal lands. And he's like, do you really think that I'm a monster? That I would be the one to invade the mortal lands? I am not the one that's going to be invading the mortal lands.
I can see how she thinks this though, because there's a map split in two. He hasn't even said yet who the enemy is. So obviously her first thought is fairies versus humans. And it's in his map, his location. So I can kind of see where she comes up with this. But
I guess, but after
yeah,
everything he's done to save
I
her and
know.
to protect her under
Well,
the
she's in
mountain,
denial.
yeah.
She's in fucking denial. She's always in denial, this bitch.
So she's having a panic attack about her family, and he's like, can you put your shields up? Like, step it. So Rhys then tells her, did you really think that this was going to end with Amarantha? And she's like, well, Tamlin hasn't said anything, but again, why would he tell her anything?
Duh.
But there has been so many patrols, so many meetings that she hasn't been allowed to attend, and so much attention that Tamlin had to know what was going on.
Hmm.
And she wants to know why he hasn't told her of anything that is going on. Rhysand then says that the King of Hybern has been planning his campaign to reclaim the south of the wall for over 100 years. And like you explained earlier, that Amarantha was just an experiment. Basically, Prythian is the only thing standing in the way of the King of Hybern between taking over the world, which is a
Hmm.
lot of pressure now on Prythian when they are
Yeah.
just rebuilding from dealing with Amarantha.
Hmm.
Rhysand says that, the King of Hybern would have some allies in Prythian that they would rather stand with him than fight him again in a war. That's when, Rhys goes on to explain that he fought in the war, which Amanda
Hmm.
has already gone over. So Feyre wants to know, why is he telling her this? I am going to be marrying Tamlin. I could just betray you. I can, be telling
Hmm.
Tamlin all of this. Why are you telling me this? And that's when we find out his true reasons. One is he wants Tamlin on his side, basically, and seeing if he has any intel about the King of Hybern because his father was so close to them during the First War. Because Rhysand and Tamlin's families were not on the same side of the war when
Right.
it happened, because the
Yeah.
Spring Court was fighting to keep humans as slaves, and the Night Court was fighting for the humans,
Yeah.
which is
Which
interesting.
is why he has the connection to the
Yeah.
king
So
through
it's
their dads. Although Tamlin, obviously, we learn in ACOTAR that he didn't want to fight on that side, but his whole court was on that side before he became the High
yeah.
Lord.
But, like, the Night Court has always been a protector of the humans, so it's, like, interesting that they have this bad rap.
Yeah.
And then the second reason was that Rhysand wants her help because he wants her to catch the cereal, which is so hilarious.
This still cracks
He
me up that he can't catch a fucking
Yeah.
cereal.
She's like, "Well, it wasn't that hard." That's my favorite part. She's like, "It's
Yeah,
not
she's
hard."
like,
And then she's like, "There are other people that you could have asked to do this. Why me?" He's like, "There may be other people, but there's no one else that I trust."
yes. And she trusts him too, I feel.
Yeah. She's like, "I could betray you." And he's like, "Well, I don't think that you will."
No, she's not gonna.
Reason then pushes her again on her powers, and she is in full denial that she has anything. And he says that her strength, the speed, if he didn't know any better, he would think that Tamlin and her are doing a very good job of pretending that she's normal. Her powers that she are displaying are usually the first indications among their kind that the High Lord's son might become his heir, though she is not an heir, but she was given powers from all of the seven High Lords, so her very essence is tied to all of them, and maybe they gave her more power than they expected. Maybe she could stand
Yeah,
against all of them and hold her own as a High Lady. That's when
yeah.
she's like, there are no such things as high ladies. Like, well, we're going to come back to that conversation. He's like, maybe you're not a high lady, but maybe you could be something similar. What if she could wield the power of all seven high lords at the same time? She could be very powerful in an upcoming war. He wants her to start mastering her powers. And she's like, well, Tamlin is
Mhm.
never going to allow this. And Rhysand's like, well, yeah,
Fuck
Rhysand
Tamlin.
basically says that. He's like, Tamlin isn't your keeper. He sat on his ass while you were shredded apart under the mountain.
This is my notable line for chapter 7, page 74. Rhysand says, "You want to save the mortal realm? Then become someone Prithian listens to. Become vital. Become a weapon. Because there may be a day, Feyre, when only you stand between the King of Hybern and your human family, and you do not want to be unprepared."
Mhm.
He has a point,
Yeah,
though.
he's like, this territory is likely to be a war zone. War is coming.
Yeah,
Don't be delusional. Don't pretend like it's
yeah.
not going to happen.
Hmm.
So,
And don't wait for someone else to save
yeah, the
you.
choice is hers, and no one else can make this choice for her. And he's just trying to drill that into her head. He's like, I can't make
Yeah.
you, and Tamlin certainly shouldn't be able to make you do one thing or the other.
Hmm.
After that intense conversation between them, she doesn't really see Rhysand for the rest of the week, but she kept practicing
Hmm.
her alphabet and the sentences that he left for her, such as Rhysand is the most handsome High Lord, Rhysand is the most delightful High Lord, Rhysand is the most cunning High Lord.
I love that she goes along with it too and is writing these sentences out. Not like she knows to write anything else, but it's
No,
just
it's
funny.
hilarious that she does it anyways.
Yeah.
And when Rhysand does return, that's when we get that conversation with Rhysand and Mor that they let her overhear about Asriel and Cassian and the
Mhm.
temple being destroyed and the priestesses being murdered. And then he explains to her, you know, what winnowing is and what the Illyrian warbands are. And then he kind of disappears after that conversation. The next morning, she's like, it's time for me to go back to the spring court, and she wants to go home now. And he's like, well, can you at least say good morning, Feyre? So he's like, okay, well, are you ready to
Okay,
face
here
the
we go.
consequences of your departure? And she says that she hasn't thought about the wedding or Tamlin until just now, which is really interesting. She's like, now she
Yeah.
wants to go home and like hold him and whatever, but she hasn't been thinking about Tamlin this entire week.
I know, and she doesn't even recognize that she's lighter too, I feel. Like, not so
Yeah.
depressed.
And Freyr's like, Rhysand, no one is asking for your opinion. I surely don't want it, and I just want to go home. He's like, I give you a week of luxury, and you're calling me Rhysand? And she's like, well, I didn't ask to be here. And
Wait, what else was she supposed to call him, though?
I guess Reese, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, okay. Like they're friends. Okay, got
Yeah.
it. I'm like, what does he want her to say?
And he's like, "Listen, look at you. You have some color on your face. There's no dark circles under your eyes.
Yeah.
Your mental shields are spectacular. Like, you've had a fantastic fucking week. Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about?"
You're lighter.
Yeah. She's like, "Reesan, bring me home." And then she's like, "Oh, tell Moore that I said goodbye." And he was like, "Oh, she was waiting for an invitation from you." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't know that." He's like, "Well, you didn't ask." And
Yeah.
she didn't want to be like a burden on Favor and like force herself on her.
Which is nice, you know, she's going through a lot.
Yeah. So when he brings her back to the spring court, he's reminds her again that he's not her enemy. And she's like, "Well, you're Tamlin's enemy, so I guess that makes you mine." And he says again, "Does it?" And she just wants to be free from her bargain. And he's like, "Well, I can't do that." And she challenges him on it and says, "You can't or you won't." And he doesn't respond. It's like, "Toodaloo, good luck. I'll see you next month."
Have fun.
Yeah. He's like, "I'm avoiding that question. Good luck and time to face your consequences. Bye bye."
Bye.
She finds Tamlin and Lucian in his study with other sentries standing around a covered table, I'm assuming with maps, and Lucian is the first one to spot her. Tamlin then spots her and then is holding her in his arms at arm's length, scanning her, making sure that she's okay. And she's like, "I'm fine. No one touched me." And he's like breathing hard. He's like almost having a panic attack himself. And she's like, and keeps
Yeah.
saying, "You're right, you're right." And keeps looking over her to make sure that she's okay and saying that Rhysand could have harmed her in other ways. And she's like, "I'm truly all right. Like, I'm fine. Like, you need to calm down."
Yeah.
She then notices that the study has claw marks and that there's a new table. He then tells her that he trashed half of the house when Rhysand stole her away. She's like, "Well, he left me alone." And Tamlin's like, "Well, he's probably just playing a game to make you drop your guard," and that she's never going back there and screw the consequences.
I feel like this is more manipulation.
Yeah.
Like, he's clearly not bad, but she believes he is because she's being manipulated.
Yeah. He did nothing to her except teach her how to read and how to shield. Like, he taught her how to protect
He's
herself.
helping her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all Feyre wants
Wow.
to do now is to go upstairs and spend some alone time with him because she hasn't seen him in a week and she misses him. He's like, "Well, I
Yeah.
miss you too, but I need to know more about what you saw in the night court first." Because no one has really had access to it before. And if they have, they've come out with their brain scrambled, basically. And she's like, "I don't want to
Mhm.
talk about this right now. I want to spend time with you and we can talk about this later." But he refuses, saying that they need to know for their own good and for their safety and need to get it out of her now so it's fresh in her mind. She feels like this is an interrogation, though. Tamlin needs to know what Rhysand is planning, what they are doing is vital to their safety, and what is going on. They want to know what the layout of the court is. Is it true that they have a court under the mountain? And wants to know if she's not telling him what he wants to know because she can't remember. She's like, "I remember everything. Like, my brain is not scrambled." And since Tamlin
Yeah.
won't drop it, she starts telling him everything, describing everything that she saw while she was there. Tamlin grills her on the figures that she saw on the map, made her turn over every word that Rhysand had uttered. She told them more about Cassian and Azrael and both of them making faces, like you said earlier. She told them about the Illyrians that they hunted down that were traitors that had stood by Amarantha. And now she wants to talk about her abilities. Did Tamlin and Lucian know that it was true that she had these new powers? And Tamlin's like, "I'm sure it's possible." And Lucian says, the power of the other High Lords being transferred to her is not good, that they would kill for it. He knows for a fact that his father would not be pleased to know that a drop of his power is missing, or that Tamlin's
Mhm.
bride now has it, that he would do anything to make sure that she doesn't possess it, including killing her. Lucian also says that there are other High Lords that would do the same thing and that would agree, so that she would never be able to use their power against them. And she's like, "Well, I would never do that. I would never use my powers against any of these High Lords." And they're like,
Yeah.
"That doesn't matter. Like, you shouldn't have an edge over them." Like, she
Mhm.
didn't ask has to fucking die after saving of you.
I know, and she didn't ask for them to give her a drop of their power either,
Yeah, so
so it's not her
yeah, if
fault.
she has an e
Too bad.
yeah, if she has an edge over them now, like, that's too damn bad.
Yeah.
So she again is like, "Did you know that this is true?" And they were like, "Well, we suspected." And now
They knew.
yeah, they knew. And she wants to train. And they're like, "That will draw too much attention." She's like, "But war is coming, and she can use her powers against Hybern during this war." And he's like, "That's out of the question. And there is no war going to be had with Hybern." She's like, "Well, Reese thinks that a war is coming." And Tamlin's like, "So you believe that everything he says now?" And she's like, "Well, no, but he is very concerned."
Yeah.
And Tamlin's like, "Well, even if I did allow you to fight in the war, it would take years to train you for you to hold your own on a battlefield, because not only would you be fighting enemies, you would be fighting the other High Lords to her back."
That just irked me that he said, "If I let you
Yeah.
train." Like, fuck off. Just for that, I'd be like, "Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm gonna train right now." Ice.
Yeah. Tamlin's like, "I care if you die or get hurt, and you'll be in danger every moment for the rest of their lives. So there'll be no training, and they're going to keep these powers between them." Lucian says, "Well, I'll have my sources look into Hybern." And Lucian, as a favor to Feyre, I guess, says to Tamlin, "Maybe we should train her." And
Honestly, I don't see why they think this is bad.
yeah.
Like, don't you think if she does end up getting kidnapped, she should be able to fight her way out of it?
No,
Not that she has to go in a battlefield, but like,
yeah,
she should be able to defend herself.
exactly. And like these powers are going to come out no matter what.
Yeah.
And Tamlin's like, "No, there's too many risks and blah, blah, blah." It's just the same shit. So,
I just want to put you in a glass bottle and
yeah.
keep you
He's
forever.
like, "End of discussion," and turns the conversation back to the map that she saw back in the night court again. And there was no room for debate. And so she gives in because he was her High Lord and he was adamant about keeping her safe and to continue giving his people hope she would do this. But she is reminded that Rhys said that she is no one's subject. And then she's like, maybe he did alter my mind now. And that thought was enough to begin feeding Tamlin details once again. But I don't think, obviously, he didn't shatter her mind. I think he just showed her there's another way to life. Like,
Yeah.
you should be learning to
Or
protect yourself.
potential.
Yeah.
Yeah. He thinks that she could be a weapon
Yeah.
or vital, someone that people in Prithian listen to.
Yeah. And Tamlin just wants to hide her away in a tower, basically.
Yeah.
Whew.
Is he threatened? Like she's going to be more powerful than him or something?
Maybe.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Chapter 8. So a week later, the Tithe has arrived. She's only had one day with Tamlin before he's out the rest of the week patrolling the lands. So he's not even spending any time with her now that she's back. So not really sure why he cared that she was gone to begin with. So she has to sit with Tamlin during this ceremony, I guess, where all these different fairies and high fae, lesser fae are bringing their gifts to Tamlin. We see the water wraith come in, and she tells Tamlin that there are no fish in the lake and she does not have payment for him. She begs for mercy and he tells her, "I don't care. You have 3 days to get me your payment or it'll be doubled next month." She's begging him. She's like, "I don't have anything in the lake and I don't have gold." And Tamlin's like, "Enough. Do not interrupt me." And she apologizes, but Tamlin is being pretty harsh. And she
Yeah.
just repeats, you have 3 days. And if you don't get it to me in 3 days, it's doubled next month, or you know what the consequences will be. After one last hopeless look to Tamlin, she walks from the chambers as the next Fae approaches. Feyre is concerned. She's like, "We don't need a fucking basket of fish.
Yeah.
This fairy is starving. She has no food to feed her family," which is just bringing up thoughts of her own life when she was trying to feed her sisters and her father.
Yeah.
She says to Tamlin, "We don't need this." And he's like, "We cannot make exceptions because then everyone will demand the same treatment." And he's like, "This is what my father did and his father before that, and my son will do after me. This is just the way that it is." And she's like, "Well, maybe this shouldn't be how it is," but she's not going to
Yeah.
debate with him right now because it really isn't the time. And she's not going to
Yeah.
make him see how she's seeing this.
Right.
So she leaves the room. She's like, "I'm going to take a break because this is too much." And, before Tamlin stops her, she gets up and is leaving the room. Ianthe does try to stop her, but she just keeps walking, and Tamlin sends sentries
Mhm.
after her instead. She catches up to the water wraith and gives her her jewels, her bracelet, a necklace, maybe earrings. I can't remember what
Mhm.
else she gave her. And the wraith is like, "Well, what do you want for this?" And she's like, "I don't want anything from you." And she was like, "Well, I will never forget this, and neither will my sisters." So even though Feyre's saying that she doesn't want anything back from her, there is a debt now owed to Feyre.
Right, exactly.
Later that night at dinner, Tamlin is all kinds of pissed off because Feyre gave her jewelry to the water wraith. And he's like, "That fairy is gluttonous." And she's like, "That
Mhm.
fairy is starving. She has no fish in her lake." And she's like, "It doesn't matter if she spends all of her money on stupid things. Like, she was not going to let that fairy walk away without being able to feed her family for that day, basically."
Yeah, she understands the pain.
Yeah, she's like, "I remember being on the verge of starvation and coming home to sisters and having no food to put on the table." So Lucian does try to step in and says to Tamlin, "There's no harm done here. There are worse things
Yeah.
that have happened." And Tamlin snaps at Lucian, saying, "Did I ask for your opinion?"
Okay, so this is where my notable line is for chapter 8, page 95. Those words, the look he gave Lucian, and the way Lucian lowered his head. My temper was a burning river in my veins. Look up, I silently beseeched him. Push back. He's wrong and we're right. Lucian's jaw tightened. That force thumped in me again, seeping out, spearing for Lucian. Do not back down.
But Lucian doesn't push back, and Feyre actually enters Lucian's mind. And she is
Mm-hmm.
so freaked out by this that she needs to leave the room. Tamlin yells at her, saying you're not finished with your meal. And she's like, "Get over yourself." And she leaves the room, and she could have sworn that she also saw two burned handprints on the wood. And she was hoping that no one had saw it or paid attention to it. Which brings us to chapter 9. Feyre is pacing her room. She's hoping that it was a mistake that she saw those burns and that she hadn't just slid into Lucian's mind, but she knows that she did. Alice appears
Mm-hmm.
to help her change for bed like she does all the time. And Alice is like, "You gave your jewels to a water wraith? They're a slippery sword and they're always starving." And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, they had no food." And again, that's the line you already pointed out that Alice is like, "No one else would have helped them."
Yeah.
But, now they're in your debt. So it was after midnight when she gave up waiting for Tamlin to come to her room, and she goes to the study and he's in there alone, and there's a wooden box wrapped in a pink bow on the table. Tamlin says that he was just about to come up and is like, "You should already be asleep." And she's like, "You should already be asleep." Like, she's not a fucking child.
I know.
And Tamlin's like, "This is why I never wanted to be High Lord, because there's too much paperwork." He then apologizes to her, saying that he shouldn't have spoken to her the way that he did, and he shouldn't have spoken to Lucian the way that he did. She apologizes for snapping at him, and he's like, "Well, you had every right to. I was wrong." He then gives her the present, and she's hoping that it's not a crown, which I'm not sure why. She would think that maybe because she just gave those jewels to the water wraith. But
Yeah.
inside is something even worse. It is a traveling painting kit, which is the worst gift you could have given to her at this time. He clearly doesn't know
Literally.
her at all.
He's oblivious
Yeah.
to her needs.
And not only is this a painting kit, but it has red and blue paint in it.
Mhm. The 2 colors that she's scarred from.
Yes. So, like you said, the trauma that these colors bring her from under the mountain, but she just tries to smile it away and acting like she loves the present. He's like, "You don't like it, do
Yeah.
you?" She's like, "No, it's a wonderful gift." He was like, "Well, I was hoping that you could start painting again, that it would help you." So now we know that he knows that she is depressed, that she has all this trauma, and that he's hoping that by her painting again, that it will help her feel better. But
Mhm.
she's like, "Well, does paperwork help you?"
I'm confused about the paperwork. Like, what kind of fucking paperwork would he have to do?
I don't know. So his temper flares, saying, "Well, we're not talking about me. We're talking about you." And she's like, "Well, will I even be able to go paint where I want without having 5,000 guards following me?" And he doesn't respond, which basically means no, you won't be able to go where you
Yeah.
want. And yes, there will be 5,000 guards behind you.
I love that Feyre is giving it to him, though.
Yeah, she's like, even in that last, at the end of that, but she's like, get over yourself.
Yeah.
And so she's like, I cannot live like this. I cannot live with all these guards around. You are suffocating me. You need to let me help you. Let me work with you. I can't. I'm harder to kill now. I'm faster. I'm stronger. And he tells her, well, my family was faster and stronger than you'll ever be. And they were easily murdered. And she kind of just snapped. She's like, well, then marry someone else who can handle this then.
Yeah. And my notable line, chapter 9, page 99, he says, do you not want to marry me then? Of course I do. But you, Tamlin, I'm drowning. And the more you do this, the more guards, you might as well be shoving my head under the water.
Yeah. And Tamlin snaps. A power blasts through the room. The windows shatter. The furniture splinters. And the box of paint that he just got her explodes into dust and then glass and then wood. Which brings us to chapter 10. Tamlin has destroyed the study after his rage of power. He's panting. He's shaking. There is a look of devastation and grief on his face. But she realizes there's no debris around her. And she's like, maybe Tamlin shielded me from the destruction. But then she realizes that she created that bubble of protection. And she can not only shield herself mentally, but now she can create a physical shield as well. And Tamlin is trying to get through her shield. He's like, please let me in. Please, please, please. And so she finally lets him in or lets go of the shield. And he's like, I just can't control my rage. Today was just a bad day. And he just wants to move on and get past it. And she, at this point, is like so shook. She is just not fighting him at all and is like, I don't know what to do. He just keeps saying, I'll try to be better. Just give him some more time. Let me get through this. And
Of course, she has hope that he's gonna change.
yeah,
But
but like, what does he need to get through? But she doesn't question him at all. She just puts her arms back around him and they're body to body. And that's kind of the only way they can communicate with each other. So Tamlin is on the apology train. It's like
choo
he is
choo.
now love bombing her. He is making love to her all of the time, day and night. But, that was never their problem. Their problem is
No.
actually communicating with each other. And
Yeah.
he was
It's distracting you, Feyre.
yeah, but he was true to his word. He did lessen the guards around the estate, but they never talked about the shield that she created. Tamlin is just ignoring the fact that she has these powers. After that, though, Tamlin is back to his normal self and is away all of the time. He's away for days on end. And sometimes during the day, she doesn't speak to anybody at all. She is more and more isolated in this manner. So now she wakes up one morning and she hears Tamlin yelling, "Get out!" And then she realizes that Race is there to pick her up, and she can't believe it's already been a month since she returned from the night court. And she comes out of the room basically just wrapped in a blanket because she couldn't find any clothes to put on. And when she steps out of the room, Rhysand looks at her and goes, "Are you guys running low on food here?" And then Tamlin has the audacity to snap his head and look at her and is like, "What? What do you mean?"
How do you not notice you fuck her every night?
Yeah, you're touching her body all the time. You don't realize that it's getting thinner and thinner again. And when she is ready to leave, and there's just some bickering back and forth.
Yes, this is my notable line for chapter 10, page 107. You end her bargain right here, right now, and I'll give you anything you want. Anything. Feyre says, are you out of your mind? And Rhysand says, I already have everything I want.
Yes, he does. Rhysand's like, okay, bye-bye. They disappear before Feyre can even say goodbye to Tamlin.
Yep.
Chapter 11. Rhysand is furious. He is mad and wants to know what happened to her. And she's like, well, just look inside my head. And
Little shit.
he is just trying to get her to combat with him, to show any sort of emotion, but she's just so exhausted. She just wants to eat her breakfast and wants to know doesn't Reese have anything else better to be doing? And he's like, yeah, of course I have other things to be dealing with, but I will
Yeah.
always make time for you.
Aw. I feel like he doesn't say it in, like, a cute way at this point. He's, like, being, like, a snooty McBooty,
Yeah,
but
he's like, of course I have other things to deal with, but I'll always make time for you, fucking pain in my ass.
yeah. Yeah.
And then he's like, "Well, did anything exciting happen last month?" He's like, "I felt a spike of fear." And she was like, "It was nothing." And he's like, "Well, I know you're lying." And she's like, "Why even ask about it if you know that I'm lying?" And she was
Yeah.
like,
Good point.
which is very true. And he says that all he hears down the bond these days is silence. Even with shields up most of the time, he should be able to at least feel her, and he doesn't sometimes. And he'll literally tug on the bond to make sure that she's still alive. Like, that's how just not there she is, that he has to literally
Yeah.
tug on it to see if she's dead or not.
Yeah, that's crazy if you think about it.
Hmm.
And Tamlin is so oblivious.
Yeah. And Reason's sitting there having fucking panic attacks if she's alive or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And so basically, Reason goes on to explain that he was in the middle of an important meeting when he finally felt, that spike of fear. He got a glimpse of both Feyre and Tamlin, and then that was it. It was back to silence. And she's like, oh, well, we had an argument, and the rest is none of your business.
Yeah.
She
Perfect.
wants Reason out of her head, and he was like, well, make me, push me out. You dropped your shield this morning. Anyone could have walked in. And she just changes the subject and asks where Moore is. He is like, well, she's away. She has duties to attend to. And then he asks her, is the wedding on hold? I feel like he's just trying to get a rise out of her and any sort of
Yeah.
rise out of her. And she's just like, yes.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're not going to say, like, don't ask stupid questions that you already know the answer to, or his favorite line, go to hell. And she's like, whatever, and just reaches for a platter of tartlets and is just going to eat her food and not talk to him. He then is like, well, did you give any thought about working with me and about the war? And she was like, nope, not going to be a part of it. Don't want to deal with you. She said she's not going to be a pawn or a weapon. It just seems like they're the same to her. It just depends on who's wielding it. And she is just
Mhm.
not going to be a part of it. And Reason's like, I don't want to manipulate you. I want to help you. Literally,
Yeah.
Tamlin is manipulating you and not helping
Yeah.
you.
She's
And
brainwashed.
she's like, you just want my help because it'll piss Tamlin off. And Reese is like, you know what? Fine. I did this to myself. I dug this grave for everything that I did under the mountain. And he
Mhm.
is just wants some banter with her. And she is not giving it to him. She just doesn't have the energy. She is just wasting away with her depression. But at least she's eating at the night court.
Mhm. She feels more comfortable.
She doesn't meet him for dinner and she doesn't rise in time for breakfast, but when she wakes up at noon, he is waiting for her upstairs and wants her to copy some more sentences. He tries to get into her head and he bounces off her shield and he's like, you practiced. And she's like, well, what else was I supposed to do? She
Yeah.
literally has nothing else to do with her time in the spring court. So might as well practice my sentences and practice my shields.
Yeah.
But, like, it's just so, like, blah about her. She's like, "Well, what else was I gonna do?" And he's like,
I know.
"Okay, well, you suck and you're not any fun, so I'm gonna go because I have business to attend to elsewhere, and if you need anything, just to send word to him and he'll return." And she's like, "Okay,
Mhm.
well, I'm not gonna do that." So, literally, the week goes by, and she's just, practicing her sentences, practicing her shields, and she's starting to read full books now, which is kind of exciting that she's already at this point
Yeah.
where she can be reading novels.
Yeah.
And, Rhys returns at the end of the week. She's sitting there reading her book, and he's like, well, if you're just going to live a sedentary life, then I guess I'll just bring you your food. And she's like, okay. She tries to take the food from him, but, he moves it to try to get it away from her, and she's just getting frustrated.
Yes, so this is my notable line for chapter 11, page 113. Tell me what to do to help you. Months and months, and you're still a ghost. Does no one there ask what the hell is happening? Does your high lord simply not care?
Yeah. And she's like, well, Tamlin does care. He's just giving me the space to sort it out myself.
No.
Yeah. And Reese
Wrong.
Yeah, wrong. And Reason's like, don't let what you went through under the mountain affect you this much. If that bitch wins and you fall apart, what was it all for?
Yeah.
Then Feyre thinks, I wonder if this is what he's been telling himself for months now. But she's like, again, don't care, and lifts her
Yeah.
book back up. But before she can shield again, she lowers her shield and says, conversation over. And he's like hell it is. And he literally seals the book shut so she can't open it. And this is when you talked about earlier, she feels this icy rage and she could almost see the frost on the book. And then there's fire in her hands. And he's like, good, literally good. She's showing some sort of emotion. But just as quickly as it came, she remembers that she'll be going back to the manor and the sentries will be back in full force. Like she knows they're going to be.
And why does she still believe that it's a bad thing to go to Rhysand? Like, she's having a good time there.
Yeah.
She's reading full books now. She can do the shielding. She's learning powers.
People leave her
She's
alone.
eating.
There's nobody like following her around.
Yeah, there's no fucking guards.
And just like she knew,
oblivious.
at the end of this episode, the guards are back in full force the next morning. Chapter 12. During her first week back, she wasn't even allowed out of sight of the house. It is getting worse than ever. It's like escalated at this point.
Yeah.
But apparently, there was a nameless threat that had broken into the lands, and Tamlin and Lucien had to go deal with it. And Ianthe came to keep her company while they were gone. She was the only one now allowed inside the house. Like, Tamlin has sent away everybody else that was in the manor. Even the servants are keeping to their quarters unless they're needed at this point, which is just so sick.
Yeah.
When Tamlin and Lucien arrive back at the manor house, Ianthe tells Tamlin that she needs to talk to them for a private meeting and she wasn't allowed to go in. And this is when Lucien catches sight of Feyre having claws coming out. He takes her to a private room and wants to know how long she's had the claws for. And she's like, oh, this is the first time. And he's like, okay, like this is escalating. This is getting worse. And I need to do something about this. So she's like, let me talk to Tamlin again tonight about training the powers because they're going to manifest no matter what. And they should be prepared. And at least Lucien is seeing this, but
thank you, Lucien.
Yeah, but he has to deal with both Tamlin and Ianthe. And basically, I feel like turn Ianthe to his side because I feel like if Ianthe was like, oh, Feyre should train, then Tamlin would say yes.
Yeah, I agree.
So Lucien is fighting a lone battle because Tamlin and Ianthe are not on Lucien's side, just saying that they'll hunt and kill her. And Lucien's like, well, they're going to do that anyways if they find out. And Ianthe's like, well, this gives us an advantage of this knowledge. And it won't be Feyre alone who is targeted because these gifts that were stolen from the High Lords could pass to any children that she may bear. So not only will they may want to kill her, but they may want to use her for creating other offspring for their advantages, which is just so sick to think about.
Sick. Disgusting.
Yeah. Ianthe also points out that Rhysand is poisoning Feyre with lies and that she may have some friends across the sea that may be able to take him out. Lucien's like, we are not assassins. And Lucien tries to plead with Tamlin, but Tamlin will not consider it. So Feyre just walks away from the room. She can't hear anymore, and she locks her bedroom door that night. But Tamlin also didn't seek her out either. The next day, when she wakes up, there are sentries outside her door. This is getting to be too much.
That's wild.
Like, they're now outside her bedroom door. Like, what is she gonna do?
No shit. Like, in the fucking manor?
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna get her in there.
Yeah. But when she goes down to the hallway, I guess the front door, she sees that Tamlin and Lucien are both heavily armed. She wants to know why they're leaving so soon and where they're going. Tamlin tells her that there's some activity on the western sea border and that he has to go. She wants to go with him. She knows how to remain hidden and to just take her with him. He says, no, it will be too dangerous. Again, this is just the same conversation we've been having since chapter 2, except now it's even worse. So she's like, well, maybe I'll just wait. Or she thinks in her head, maybe I'll just wait until they're gone and then I'll go. And it's like he can read her thoughts, which he can't, but he's like, don't you dare.
He probably saw like her mind going, you know, like,
Yeah.
She was like, "Oh, yeah? I'm gonna wait for you to leave."
Yeah. She is then begging him, fighting him to go. And she's like, there's always going to be some sort of threat. There's always going to be some sort of conflict or enemy or something like that that keeps me here. Tamlin's like,
Mhm.
stop. You can barely sleep through the night. And she's like, well, neither can you. And he says, you can barely handle being around other people. That's just like an interesting comment to make because is he just assuming that because she's keeping to herself? Or is he just removing more people like because he doesn't want people around Feyre because he's like in this insane protect mode?
I know. Yeah, I feel like he is removing all the people, so how even would he know that?
Yeah, I guess like around the wedding and stuff, like she didn't talk to anyone really, but she doesn't know
Yeah.
them. Like maybe if she knew them, she
Yeah.
would talk to them.
Yeah.
So she's like, I need to get out of this house. Like, you cannot keep me locked up here. And then Tamlin says, Braun can take you and Ianthe for a ride. She's like, I don't want to go on a fucking horseback ride right now. I need to do something with my life. He's like, you are untrained and your presence will be more of a liability than anything. And she's like, well, I'm coming with you whether you want me to or not. And he's like,
That fucking pisses me off, though, because you're the one that says she can't train, and now you're gonna throw it in her face that she's untrained?
right.
Pisses me off.
And what he does next is so unfathomable. I never thought that he would stoop this low. He locks her with the shield in the manor house.
Yeah.
Lucian tells her that other people can come and go, but she is not allowed to leave until he drops this shield. And Tamlin doesn't even stick around. He just leaves, winnows, like literally leaves
Yeah.
the area. And she is like yelling. She's like, Tamlin just locked me in. She's trying and she's like banging on this door. Like I'm getting teary, like just thinking about
I
it.
know.
Like her
She has so much anxiety about being locked up already from being under the mountain, too.
yeah, she can barely hear Lucian. The panic is just taking over, and she keeps saying, he locked me in this house. He sealed me in this house. She goes for the nearest window and she tries to put her hand through it, but it just bounces back off and she just can't breathe. She's like, I'm trapped. I'm trapped. I'm trapped in the house, just like she was trapped under the mountain. She might as well be in
Mhm.
her cell again. She keeps saying over and over to herself, he locked me in. He locked me up. He locked me up. He trapped me here. And it just keeps going and going and going in her head. She can no longer hear the spring court sounds of birds chirping and the breeze coming through the curtains. She just starts
Mhm.
cocooning herself in that black cocoon where all these powers are coming through.
Yep.
Alice is having a fucking panic attack
Yeah.
on the other side because they hear her screaming and, you know, because he trapped her in there. And you know what? I'm just so fucking happy that when she sits on that floor in that cocoon, her ring melts off her finger because I feel like
I
that
know.
just solidified the end of their relationship for me right there. Is
Yeah.
how dare you?
I feel like it's all coming to light to her too. But also, Alice, like, fuck yeah. She's like letting her escape.
Yeah.
She's like, get her the fuck out of here and get her help. Like, she needs help.
Yeah.
And she knew she wasn't going to get it there.
No, Alice has had enough. I think she's also
Yeah.
flabbergasted that Tamlin locked her in the house after everything that
Yeah.
happened. She's like, what the
Yeah.
fuck?
Yeah.
This has been a step too far.
Right.
So, Moore is carrying Feyre through the spring court grounds, and as she carries her through the garden, through the fields, up a hill, down a hill, and into a cave, Feyre starts thrashing because that just reminds her of going under the mountain as well. But Moore
Yeah.
keeps telling her, you're free, you're free. She's not saying that you're safe, not you're protected, but that she's free.
Yeah.
And that just hurts my heart so
I
much
know.
for Feyre.
I feel like it calms her down though.
Yeah.
Like knowing she's no longer trapped, she's good.
And
Yeah.
she's only in the cave for like 2.5 seconds when she feels the sunlight and she thought maybe that they were in the summer court. And that's when she
Mhm.
hears Rhysand. He is there waiting for them. And Moira's like, I did everything by the books. And Rhys is like, okay, well then we're done here. Let's go. And then he winnows them and she can feel the darkness and they're back in the night court.
Yes. And he saves her
And he
again.
saves her again. He's the only person that is ever fucking saving her.
Literally.
Chapter 13, our last chapter.
We made it. Yay.
When Feyre wakes up, she wakes up to sunlight, and Rhysand is sitting in the armchair across from her where she's sprawled out on this couch. Like, he sat there and watched her probably all night to make sure that she was
Yeah.
okay. She wants to know what happened, and Rhysand said that she was screaming and that she also managed to scare every servant and sentry in Tamlin's manor when she wrapped herself in darkness and no one could see her. She wanted to know, though, did I hurt anyone? Because that is our
Of
girl
course.
Feyre. She needs to know if she did
Yeah.
any harm. And he was like, no. Anything that you did was just contained to yourself. Rhysand tells her that it would have been very complicated if he had shown up and been the one to walk into the house and get her, but all he could do was smash the shield, and that was fine. But Mor had to go in herself, use her own powers, and carry her on her own 2 feet to another court before Rhysand could bring her here. If he had done it the other way and went in himself, Tamlin would have free reign to march his forces onto his land and reclaim Feyre, and he has no interest in an internal war. He's trying to prep for a war with Hybern. He doesn't need a war with Tamlin.
Yeah, but I also think he's actually protecting Feyre. You stay until you want to go back.
Yeah.
And Tamlin now can't come get you.
Nope.
Bitch.
Yeah. Nope, he can't, because if Tamlin enters Rhysand's lands without cause, Rhysand can attack him, and
Can
Tamlin's
attack
not
him,
going to do
yeah.
that because
No.
he's scared of Rhysand.
So much for protecting Feyre.
Right? So Feyre says, but when I go back, ... And Rhysand's like, your presence here is not a part of the monthly requirement, so she's under no obligation to go back unless she wants to. She says, he locked me in that house. And he says, I know, I felt you, even with your shields up for once. And she's like, but I have nowhere else to go. And he's like, well, you can stay here as long as you want. You could stay here forever if she feels like it. And she tells him that she needs to go back at some point. And he's like, well, when you're ready. If you want to, you can. No questions asked. I'll bring you back. I made an offer when you first came here, and I need your help. So if you help me, food, shelter, clothing is all yours.
Yes, and this is my notable line for chapter 13, page 128. Feyre is thinking Tamlin would be furious. He would shred the manor apart. But he locked me up. He so deeply misunderstood me. Or he'd been so broken by what went on under the mountain. But ... he locked me up. No excuse, Feyre.
Yeah.
Stay in the night court forever.
Rhysand says, well, if you come with me, there is no going back. You will not be allowed to speak or to talk about anything she sees or hear if they're not a part of Rhysand's court. Because if she does, his people, will die. She will have to lie about it forever. If she ever returns to the Spring Court, she will not be able to tell her friends. She won't be able to tell anybody. She's like, I won't tell anyone. I won't even tell them. Like, she can't even say Tamlin's name at this point.
Yeah.
So she wants to know where they're going. And he's like, we're going to Valaris, the city of starlight. They land in a foyer of someone's house. She says the house that they landed in is a home that has been lived in, and they're in a city. And that is how part 1 ends.
So the general predictions, number 1, I predicted that Rhysand was going to fall for Feyre, and she's going to be forced to choose between them. Still valid. Still think it's going to happen. Still think there is a little bit of, like, the way they interact. He's definitely feeling her a little bit more. 2, King Hybern was going to make an appearance as our next villain. Cha-ching.
Still valid.
I literally thought of Baby Mama, like, at that point, like, I was right. Well, I'm not right yet, but we can assume that he's going to be the villain at this point since Rhysand has so nicely told us his backstory and Amarantha was a test and all that. 3, the mortal world was still not safe from the King of Hybern, so I did predict that Feyre's family was going to come and live in the Spring Court for safety. But I personally do not think Feyre should go back to the Spring Court. I still think, though, that the fam is definitely still going to be back into the story somehow. And I also predicted previously that if it happens, I could totally see Lucien and Nesta falling for each other. Sorry, Lucien, I don't think that's going to happen anymore. But we'll get you a girl, buddy.
I still have a good story about that, but still can't tell you yet.
I know. We have a few more episodes to go before that, but I'm going to remind you.
Okay.
So after reading part 1, I did come up with a few more predictions.
Okay.
1, I definitely think Feyre will become the first High Lady of Prythian. There's so much foreshadowing already, and it's part 1.
Yeah.
So I think totally she's going to end up being more powerful than any of them, and they're going to have to listen to her for once. And maybe she'll lock Tamlin up.
That would be nice.
2, I don't think a wedding will happen with Feyre and Tamlin. There's too much foreshadowing about this mating bond that isn't there yet, air quotes. And I just don't think it's going to magically show up ever, especially after this last incident with them.
Yeah, I don't think
I
you
think
could.
there will be a mated bond, but it ain't Tamlin and Feyre.
Well,
It is
I
not
don't know
them.
how you could just lock your maid up in a house when she has
Yeah.
severe
No.
PTSD.
Yeah, not a mated bond. 3, when Feyre goes back to the spring court, I think she's just gonna tell them, if she goes back to the spring court, I should say, because I don't think she should go. I think eventually she's gonna go or run into them somehow. I don't know. But I think that she's gonna tell Tamlin and Lucian that Rhys fucked up her brain so that
Mhm.
she can't remember what she saw in the night court. Because she promised Rhys that she wasn't going to say anything to him.
Yeah.
And she had to lie to protect the lives of the fairies there. And I think that that's probably the biggest reason why she's going to lie. She does not want people to die because of her.
No, definitely not. And
Yeah.
I definitely think that it wouldn't make sense that this is the last time we see Tamlin or Lucian
Yeah, of
because
course.
she just gets, like, scooped up by Moore, and there's no
Yeah.
kind of, like, final confrontation between them.
Yeah, and I don't mean like they're not gonna come back into the story. I just mean like I don't know if she's gonna go back to the spring court or if they're gonna be somewhere else.
Mhm.
I don't know that part yet, but
Okay.
I do think she's not gonna spill the beans. She's gonna protect Rhys's secrets
Mhm.
about the night court, and she's just gonna lie and say she can't remember. He fucked up her brain. It's the easiest lie.
Yeah, she
for
owes
her.
them nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And 4, I was thinking about this literally as we were talking about Ianthe.
Okay.
Did she have something to do with the murders of the other high priestesses? I feel like she did.
She's like, she's
Something's fishy about
there's
her.
something going on there.
Yeah, like she's not as good of a character as we think, I
Mhm.
think. Is she a King Hybern spy?
Ooh.
Is she? Don't tell me.
I'm
But yeah,
like,
something's up with her.
do you want me to answer
Something is
that?
up. The only thing that I can't wrap my head around for this, well, is she's not technically part of the spring court. She's just in the spring court.
Yeah.
So she can technically go to the night court.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So then she definitely had something to do with it. Whether it was mercenaries she sent or did it herself, we get some foreshadowing about how she doesn't like the other priestesses. So yeah, those are my predictions for part 1.
Ooh, I can't wait to see what happens.
Yes, I know. I can't wait. But that is all we have for you today. I'm so excited to continue reading and see how this plays out with Feyre escaping to the night court.
Mm-hmm.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let us know what you think by leaving us a review and comments on any of the platforms you are listening/watching on or on our social media pages. This helps tremendously to get the word out and lead more listeners to find our show and tune in.
Yes. Don't forget to email, follow, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and tell all your friends about us. And we hope the rest of your day is blissful. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Join us next week for part 2 of A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, covering chapters 14 through 21. Happy reading!